Okay, welcome back for our workshop. We have got Wellington Electricity in this morning, so I'll hand over to Mike to introduce our guests.
Oh, good morning, councillors. I'd like to introduce you to Greg and Kevin from Wellington Electricity. We talk a lot about three waters in our roading network because we own those assets, but actually this is another lifeline without which we cannot function as a city. There's a bunch of interesting stuff that these guys are doing within Porirua City, so I've asked Greg to come along and give you a brief on that stuff, but as usual, you've met Greg before, most of you have. Greg is more than happy to have a discussion and answer questions that you might have afterwards. So I'll hand over to Greg. Thanks, Greg.
So we'll take questions at the end then. Okay.
And kia ora, and thank you, Mayor, and councillors for the opportunity to share what Wellington Electricity's been up to and the good news of the shared projects and success of those, as well as where we're heading in the future and the help we still need from council to do some of the things around our infrastructure, but still make it affordable for our community. So that's a big focus. Beside me, my colleague Kevin Small, he's our General Manager of Project Management Office, and he's tasked with looking at some of our big projects. So that's why he's here along today. And one of the ones he's just completed is our new head office. We were in Lower Hutt on the Petone seashore, which was a beautiful place on the Esplanade. But from a climate change point of view, not the smartest place for a utility to be housed. So we've moved away. Moved up the road to Upper Hutt, where we've located and relocated and built a building, single story, very strong earthquake resilience, so we can actually move and look at planning of our network for the next 50 years. If I just move forward and talk quickly about Wellington Electricity, we're a lines company, poles and wires, transformers, and really looking at providing reticulation that our retailers can then retail the energy across those. It is a very changing landscape for infrastructure. Most of our infrastructure was put in pretty much like the council infrastructure in the 50s and 60s. It has a life of around 50 years, and we can see now we're starting to enter a rebuild program. And we've been extremely lucky that our networks that we look after in our 4 cities has been quite a slow growth network. So we've been able to fill up the assets without having to do a lot of investment. As we get near to the end of their life, we're having to look at replace those assets. But it's at a very good time to do that, to think about all the change we're having in the energy sector around what demands are going to have on electricity going forward in the future. We have shareholders overseas. They own 27 networks like ours around the world. And for us, that's a huge benefit to tap into developments in Australia, in Hong Kong, in the UK, in Canada, and a number of other areas that we've got sister companies who are seeing some of our challenges 5 or 10 years ahead of what we're seeing them. Key things that drives our network is safety. They are electricity assets. We do ensure that where we can, we turn them off to operate. In some cases, businesses find that quite difficult, so we have to manage around that. So the key thing around our contracted workforce is to make sure the culture of safety is very strong and make sure that we do explain to people the needs to actually take time. If we are trying to rush to finish a job, we'd rather the job was finished late than finished with someone getting hurt. The network performs extremely well. It's a safe network to work on, and it's one of the most reliable networks in the country. It's very densely populated, around 35 to 36 customers per kilometre, and we only really interrupt customers on average once every 2 years for around 35 minutes. Anyone that's had a power outage recently will say, that's not true, it took 4 hours for you to restore supply, but this is an average across our 177,000 connection points. Most connection points are now having meters provided by smart meter providers. There's a real paradox in the word smart meter. They're only smart because it means the meter reader doesn't have to read them anymore. So we have to be very, very careful about how we use the word smart. We don't own them. We're looking at what services we can get from them, but at the moment it's fairly limited. Last 5 years, we've been very pleased to see a big upswing in subdivision growth, which is what our network's designed to connect to. And we're now, for the last 5 years, looking at what our plans are around decarbonisation. New Zealand, through the Climate Change Commission, has put quite a lot of emphasis on that being helped through greater electrification. And that's largely looking at our network having to do a lot of the heavy lifting. We become a petrol company to fuel the cars if they shift across to battery cars. We also become a gas company. So the gas cooking, heating, hot water heating that's going on at the moment, we may be looking at having to do that as well. Our network's not sized to do that just yet, so we have to be very strategic about how we make those changes. And this leads to where our growth areas are looking at. So if we did it in the next 10 years, no network reinforcement, then we're starting to look at areas where upgrade is required across the network quite quickly. Good thing about upgrading assets is if you can do the modelling that looks at where that's going to happen, you can start on that journey early. We are regulated by the Commerce Commission under the price of what we can charge and the reliability and quality of what our network achieves. So we don't get to, although we've got commercial shareholders, we don't get to have large swings in what we can charge on the network. There may be some questions about that later on. So as a lines company, we sit between the transmission grid operator, Transpower, and we sit between the retailers who use the network, who then look after the customers who connect to it. That is a bit problematic when we get the storms roll through because the relationship with the customers is with their retailer. We suddenly get handed the baton to say, now go talk to the customers that we used to own that you now have because your power's gone off. So we have this very difficult situation of trying to patch that together and then try and reach the customers who may or may not think because of their smart meter they need to ring their retailer to say their power's off. So there's a few problems there. The big changes on the network really come at choices customers are making. So you'll see that there's solar available now, electric vehicles have been popular, subsidies went away, they're no longer popular, they'll sort of come back again, the fuel price has gone up, and battery storage. So these are the things that are starting to give customers all the things that would have happened normally up our supply chain is now happening at people's homes. So it's a wonderful opportunity if you can afford these new technologies. Most people can't. Only 3% of our homes in our wider region across the 4 cities have solar. 97% of people don't, and we have to think very carefully about the commercials of making sure there's equity between those who have and those who do not have. One of the big issues that we look at is gas. An electricity company thinking about gas sounds like a paradox. Gas does a lot of heavy lifting in our 4 cities. It takes away heating load, it takes away water heating load, it takes away loads that are used for cooking. The problem we've got with gas, it's running out. It was going to run out around 2050, transition for that. It's probably running out in 2030. Before it runs out, it'll spike in price, become very expensive. So what does our network look like with no gas? And that's tricky because it's invisible to people who run gas in their homes as to what their future needs are for putting electricity connections in. There are huge barriers to exit gas. You've got to buy new appliances. And the disconnection rates for gas are very, very high. They're around $1,500 to disconnect from gas. It's free to connect. It's like walking into a nightclub, free to walk in. You've got to pay before you get out. So our future of no, I've lost half the crowd talking about nightclubs. Sorry about that. So our future of gas is something that we have to try and manage on the way through. So the no gas network is going to mean we need a bigger network. And that's the thing we have to look at. We think we've got some ideas around how to manage that from a technology point of view. We think we've got some ideas how to manage that around education of customers around their choices and the ability of the variability of shifting demand outside congestion periods. Now that all sounds very confusing, so we have to sort of take it through really quickly. If everyone uses something at the same time period and we can shift some people away, there's more capacity to share around and it delays the need for us to invest in our network. My shareholders shiver when I say that, delaying investment, because they say, well, we're here to invest. I say, yes, but we're regulated by the Commerce Commission. We don't have a pot of gold to invest in the network. We've got to spread it out over the life of the asset. So if we shifted away from gas and we looked at the 62,000 customers with gas and everyone put in a 3 kilowatt electric hot water cylinder, it'll put 180 megawatts onto our 550 megawatt system. That's a 34% increase in our demand. Reading the mayor's body language, that's probably not a good look. However, if we think carefully about where we can influence customers' choice about what appliances they use, we can take that 34% down to around 6% if they decided to choose electric hot water heat pumps. So this is a technology that I was sceptical of. So I put one into my own home just to check that this does actually work, and it works okay. There's a fan, it's slightly different noise in the garden. But if we can get government, local government, ICA, to start looking at putting one of these in, that's fine. If you go to the website and look for one of these, they're at $15,000. If you talk to the people that are bringing these in from countries that have the proliferation of those, it's coming down to $5,000. That $5,000, we can spread that over 10 years, not that we're a finance company. All of a sudden, you can start to see we're making things affordable for consumers, and it means we don't have to build a bigger network. This is the sort of thinking that we need to find people to talk about the education of these appliances becoming available. We've had one of these companies talk to us around they need to bring stock in. Would we help finance their stock so they can actually push the stuff out? So we're starting to think pretty carefully about, it's almost going back 25 years, where we used to own appliance shops to inform people about electricity was good, you should use one of our appliances. It's very funny how things are coming right round again to say we have no interest in across the fence to the consumers' homes, but we need to educate people about there are choices if you think your gas price is getting too high, that the electric hot water cylinder is cheaper than the $16,000 advertised in the market. So if we can actually create a market where the cheaper one can come in, be subsidised with payments over 10 years on a financing system, maybe on council rates, I'll float that out because I know the audience is keen on that. Those sorts of things we need to think about working together to make that happen. So what is the network really looking at doing? We had most of our terrible moments thinking about electric vehicle penetration. We are fortunate in some of our areas that people have the option of 2 cars and changing one to electric and going home and plugging it in. Now, our network peaks in winter evenings. People come home, it's cold, electric heating turns on, and the main demand on our network, the peak demand, happens on winter evenings. The problem with that, if you bring an electric vehicle home which is looking for maybe 2 kilowatts, houses tend to run on average around 4.5 kilowatts, and you put another 2 kilowatts on that, the peak period that hasn't seen before, you're going to start to run out. The vehicles coming into the market can also charge at 5 or 7 or 11 if you own a Tesla. Any Tesla owners here? I don't own a Tesla. Just a question. That was like a group thing to encourage participation. So what we're trying to do in our networks, we're trying to work out how do we incentivise people not to charge in this 4-hour period. So you'll see that most of our pricing is going to what's called time of use. So the time of use for winter is to put a high price in the market between 5 and 9 at night. You get the retailers to pass that on. That's our biggest challenge. And that published price should give people the optionality of avoiding it, fantastic, or the optionality of actually taking the price. If they take the price, they're sending us a very clear signal, Greg, we want you to build a bigger network. And we'll go, we're absolutely happy to do that. The thing we want to do is start to differentiate those areas of our network that are driving that and start to price them differently for the areas of our network who aren't. And that really comes back to social equity. Now, it's a problem for retailers. They will complain to the market regulator that these lines companies have too much complex pricing. But unless we do that, we aren't going to be equitable across all of our community of the haves, the 3% solar, and the have-nots, the 97% who don't have the affordability to buy the new equipment. Flattening down that big peak and pushing EV charging after 9 o'clock means we can actually manage a lot of electric vehicles on our network as long as we get that in. We've lobbied government, we've lobbied ICA, we've lobbied the Electricity Authority to say, you need that as a policy, straight up. You buy a vehicle, and they've done this in the UK, you plug this thing into your wall socket, you plug your vehicle into this thing, and that says there's no charging between 5 and 9 in the winters. Very, very simple. You don't have to talk to people about that. You've got the optionality to plug it into the socket if you want to pay a higher price, but the idea is to get that behaviour done. The simpler, the better. We've talked about smart EV charging before. We went through a whole lot of work between 2015 and 2019 about building what we could do. We built the platform, we built the device to go into the charging units. We've let all that go. The reason being is electric vehicles now go home and go on the internet. What they do on the internet, we're not sure, But effectively, the vehicle manufacturers, because of the IP connection of the vehicles, can actually start to offer services of shifting that demand when they charge. So we don't need to build that. We just need to influence the vehicle manufacturers down the track. As good lines company people, full of engineers, they want to do stuff. We say, well, that's for the consumer to do. Let's go back a step and talk a level up about the OEMs who are providing the vehicles and say, can we shift some of this demand and still guarantee that's there? Aspirationally, I'd like to have electric vehicles actually turn their batteries on at certain times so we can take demand off our grid. That's a bit tricky. Energy safety have some concerns about that, but we think down the track that would happen. What we're probably going to have to do is actually get our own network batteries and cycle those around our network until electric vehicle owners have confidence that they're not going to have a flat battery from their local lines company. So we need to sort of manage that. It's a step too far at the moment, but we think that's where we might need to go. First slide on celebration. Te Ararapahu is a road that we worked with council on to co-locate water and electricity. It was a bit problematic because it's a new road, pretty unpopular to close a road, but it took $1 million of cost out of this for electricity consumers, purely just for coordinating the asset, taking away all of the traffic management costs, and working on this as a very successful project. It largely reinforces supply to Whitby. I know 2 people who live in Whitby in this room, and it is actually starting to think about how we can do work differently. I understand water assets are going through similar pressure as power assets. They might be slightly ahead of the game from us, but these sorts of co-location work is very important. And the idea of doing this together means that we probably have to think about other ways of operating, which is probably street closure rather than traffic management and going down to single lane. Other areas that are coming up, Porirua sewage treatment plant. We're in discussions with how we need to look at that and how we need to supply that. Right at the moment, the zone substation that we supplied from is pretty full, so we've got to work out ways of actually managing that. But we're also looking at forward plans of where the future demand in Porirua is going to come from. So we may have some other options of that. Porirua Hospital, early engagement, Wharaora, and that's around resilience and transition away from gas. Whittaker's Chocolate, again, risk of losing the audience. We've put a lot of capacity into our network to supply them from an adjoining substation, not the main one they're on, so it's the resilience and security of supply. And Kiwi Rail, they're looking to electrify more of their trains. That's one of Wellington's key benefits as a big city, is people moving in from Porirua or the Hutt Valley on the train system. It's about 80,000 people that move on a daily basis, and that's a huge key thing that we want to sort of maintain, but the electrification of that's going to increase, and that's across about 40 of our major sites. Platinum Farm, we talked about this last time. Good to see big subdivision development coming forward in the city and looking at how we can actually build infrastructure to manage that. And also the live project at the moment is Te Tahi Bay cable replacement. So this is one of our earlier oil-filled cables. Kevin's just kicked me. One of our earlier fluid-filled cables. It is biodegradable. I wouldn't wash my hands in it, but it does break down over time. So this is a cable that's just showing some problems that we're seeing will be a trend for some of our other very high-level assets. This cable is built for 33 kV operation. That's the highest voltage we run on our network, which is kind of the big sub-transmission stuff. So it only operates at 11 kV because it's just operating through that Te Tahi Bay area. We're replacing it with, again, another 33 kV cable because we think to support Porirua's own substation in Mungarvan Ave, we may need to put a substation at Te Tahi Bay to bring the two together. And that's trying to not have too many eggs in one basket, and it's looking around the planning of more diversity across our network. Project's going very well. We do have some work in the Murray Land Court just to get some easements through a piece of property, and we'll run through that process, and that's looking like it's pretty positive. And look, a big thank you to Council for allowing us to go through some of the reserve areas to get this work done. Once the cable's in the ground and it's covered over, it's still a reserve area. It's only in end of life we've had to start to look into the cable a bit more, but this is again another successful project of coordination with Council and keeping costs low for our community when this asset comes on. Because we're regulated, our settings force us to actually optimise how we use our assets. We're at a point now where most of our headroom for our capacity is largely filled up, and it's coming into a time when there's going to be greater demand on the network. So strategically, we have to look at what our network of the future is looking like. So we're in discussion with the Commerce Commission at the moment. We've done a lot of modelling. We did some initial models in 2023. We put that result into our 2024 asset management plan, which is a 10-year look at the network for the Commerce Commission to see where we need to be funded. We did a 30-year plan to look at what does the Climate Change Commission net zero 2050 look like. And the network doubles in capacity. It doubles in capacity because there are no cars driving with petrol or diesel. Some probably aren't doing that now with the price of it. There is no gas on the network to substitute heating and load. And there's an uptake of solar, and there's an uptake of what we call flexibility services, where people can shift their load away from congestion periods. It still doubles the network. We put that in with the Commerce Commission and said, looks like we're going to have to invest this amount of money to meet the doubled network by 2050. We only got 40% of that CapEx, which is fine, because as the regulator is looking at the long-term benefits for customers, they didn't want to front-end that CapEx, build it before the people came. So we had to actually spread that out. It's a great way of engaging, because now we're starting to look at other ways of actually managing how we spread the rest of that 60% into blocks that are most meaningful for customers. So we have started at the big end, the things that are dealing with the blocks of 10,000 customer increments. And then as we roll through, we'll start to, in the next 5-year section, look at the smaller blocks. We have to engage with the community about this. A lot of it's quite technical, but the key thing that the Commission wants to see is our proposal of what the price will do is how the community think that's affordable, and the trade-off between paying slightly less but having slightly increased interruptions on the power system. So we're trying to give price quality trade-offs as part of we do that, and that's what we're looking at doing between now and November of this year, start to engage with the community. What we need from Council is to look at your community groups so we can come and present to them, because you're very connected to the community. Recent storms of 2013 have sort of taught us that this council is probably one of the most advanced around their community engagement, and we need to talk to all of the social economic groups in each city and talk to them about what does this mean if we talk about investing this much money, what does it mean if we talk about that much money, and what's important to you, a few more outages or paying a bit more so the outages stay at the same level. That's that 35 minutes once every couple of years. Infrastructure renewals happen across all of New Zealand, particularly in this region, and we need to make sure we can also coordinate and cooperate with new entities like Water Done Well to make sure we can actually co-locate as much as we can. We may not put cable in, we may just put orange ducts for future access later on when we need to. So our renewal message is we're pretty clear about these. We've talked about the network's done a really good job providing safe, secure and reliable services, assets reaching end of life, and we need to look at what they need to do going forward with electrification. Our economy, unfortunately, is very slow at the moment, so there's very low household affordability for any change in price of anything. So we need to be very targeted around our investment. The Commerce Commission determines what our price movements can be. Typically, they try and limit things around, to limit price shock around that 10% increase. So we need to look in that area. We need to include the big changes of solar, battery, electric vehicles and the exit of gas. While there's a move away from fossil fuels, we need to provide capacity for electrification to replace those. The interesting thing about once you take fossil fuels out of your household and you increase your electricity, the energy price in your home is still cheaper. It's still cheaper by about 30%. That's a great tagline, but I'm talking about the end of it. I'm not talking about the messy middle where you go through the conversation of still one car on petrol, but you've also got some stuff shifted away from gas. And that becomes that expensive part in the middle. You don't get the benefits on day one. So we do need Council to be involved in helping us make this transition. We want to make it as efficient as possible. And there's a talk about whether we can actually upgrade for the coming 5 decades around thinking about how we can have longer periods of time of working on some of these sites. To not be able to get to a site until 9:30 and then have to be off the road by 3 o'clock gives us a very small window. What we could do 20 years ago in a day, we have to do over 3 days. We have to establish, disestablish, establish, disestablish, establish, disestablish. The cost on traffic management, the cost on deployment and moving away from site is killing these projects. If we have to do more of that, we have to say, really, really sorry, we need a meaningful conversation about having longer work hours in the road corridor. So that's my big wish from this meeting, or the next meeting, or the next meeting. So we do need council to support our infrastructure renewal. We are joined at the hip on this. Most of the things that people have around electricity, it is an essential service. It has to be affordable, and we want the community to understand the benefits they're getting from that activity. Energy has become very political. We have to be very careful about this. There's a lot of very, very good lobby groups who are capturing government's ear at the moment. The solar community has been very active. Anyone not know Mike Casey? Mike Casey's fantastic. But he's very much on a single issue. You've got to think about where that goes. And also the electric vehicle charge point operators, again, a very, very powerful lobby group. But we have to be very careful. Costs incurred on our network need to fall on those that incur them. And sometimes that for smaller businesses is quite difficult. We've purchased coal, not me, but the generator retailers have purchased coal because the gas supply is so inconsistent and we don't know where it's going to go. But that gives us a fossil fuel that we can run our thermals on for the next 10 years. And we need to get the electrification up and running. Conclusion slide. We got there. Well done. Thank you, Kevin. You did really well. Electricity is going to provide a huge opportunity for New Zealand's net zero carbon future, but there's going to be some bumps along the way. We have a large infrastructure investment. We're at that phase of our investment that we need to start renewing assets. But we've got to balance that against the low affordability in the community at the moment. Most of our assets have 50-year lives, so we've got to think carefully around what the end life of that asset is going to be having to do. Water and electricity, if the infrastructure is being replaced, should be coordinated as much as possible. Climate change has a big bearing on how we plan our assets, where they are and where they locate. We've shifted our head office. We are working very, very closely with some climate change modelling around what that means. We just need to coordinate this as council as a key stakeholder in this. I think there's a big opportunity to talk about more efficient infrastructure deployment. And finally, our customer consultation is a key for our development around price quality preferences, and I'd love to meet council's community groups to discuss that with them. That is me. Thank you for your time.
Wonderful. Thank you. I have got a list of people asking questions. Can I just only one quick one on your upcoming work? I'm under the Greater Wellington have bought a site in Kenepuru for their bus charging.
Yes.
Or that wasn't listed on there?
No, bus charging is another 43 minutes of discussion.
Yeah, but I thought they bought the site and you didn't have the network capacity to do them.
No, we don't. The thing about bus charging is we've had many bus charge operators that have said, we want to put charging in this area. We go, that's interesting. They buy the land and they come and talk to the utility. Is there capacity there? There often is not. The thing about bus charging, I think I might have mentioned this last time, the best place to charge a bus is at a train station.
But they've purchased this land, haven't they?
I know. And you kind of sit there and if you're an operating company and you follow your operating company opportunity and say, this is what we're doing, we're going to buy land, and the very traditional business model, it doesn't work for electrification. It's a very different business model. So if we park the buses at any of the rail stations, overnight there is capacity at any level you want for any amount of bus charging. It's already there. Buy the land, you're forcing me to upgrade my network. We upgrade the network. The first question we get was if we need 8 megawatts of power to run a bus charging operation. I mean, look at it and go, okay, that's a lot of energy and it's a very big system. When we go through and work out the maths and give them the price for 8 megawatts, it comes down to 2 megawatts. And we simply say the price quality trade-off of actually shifting the buses to charge over a wider period of time rather than trying to charge them all within the first 3 hours of the evening is where we need to get to. So we are hopefully working with that. The big charges we put in at Reef Street for the first bus operating company 5 years ago wanted 0.5 megawatt of charging at the end of a feeder. We said, why have you put it in this location? They said, that's where the bus turns around and comes back into town. We said, are there many houses at the end of the... No, that's the end of the network. We go, we haven't got network in that area for 0.5 megawatt. And they said, well, we want network there. We said, that's okay, we'll do the numbers. It's $1 million to build 0.5 megawatt at the end of the network. We don't have $1 million. We go, look, that's completely understandable. You're a bus company. And we said, what we can do, though, is we can go into a dynamic connection agreement. Because historically, when you ask for a connection, we don't often ask how often you're going to use it and when. Go to a dynamic connection agreement, we can say, you can have your 0.5 megawatt anytime you want until you can't, and then we'll turn it down. Turning it down is probably only for 2 or 3 hours of the day, and it turns down from 0.5 megawatt to maybe 100 kilowatts or 20%. And that's never caused a problem. So the idea of these dynamic connection agreements is something that we're starting to propose to companies that their consultants say we need this much. Now, the consultant won't run the bus operation, they won't pay the power bill, and we say, if we built 8 megawatts for a supply, we'll have a stranded asset, because you'll very, very quickly have your very clever finance people go, if we change the operation to do this, you only need maybe 20% of it. So we've got to be very careful around how we actually help people through these sort of questions.
Okay, thank you. So problem is with Greater Wellington, but we've got 8 people waiting. So Mike, then Jeff.
Yeah, thanks very much, Greg. It's been impressive. Look, and I was glad to hear you say Wellington Water are in discussions with you for the new processes, but we're still getting power cuts to that plant now, and I understood you'd made upgrades to that, to the supply to the Rukutani point. Is it fixed up or not? Because every time we have a power cut there, it's a disaster for us.
Yeah, so part of my homework last time was to look at rearranging the connection of our network, which we have done. So we've put it onto a part of the network that has less interruptions. So the part that had more interruptions, you're now on less interruptions, you're still getting interruptions. So let me take this as my first action and get our people to have a look at how many of those outages you're getting and what we can do about it. That's our bread and butter.
Don't forget we put a backup Jenny in there, but the Jenny didn't kick in that last one, so there's some stuff for Wellington Water to look at as well.
Perfect. Yep.
Second question, light standards, lamp standards, power poles. Yes. I live in Titahi Bay, and coming along the causeway from the bay to Porirua, I noticed that you've used galvanised on those, and those things are rusting out already. Is it, what do you do around coastal areas?
Yeah, so fortunately, lighting is not our...
That's us.
Yeah, it's not our area of expertise. We leave that with the council. So we provide our power poles for connections to go on, but largely your contractor's choice of equipment.
I'm sure Mike will reply to that. Not today, but not today. Don't worry, Mike.
Oh,
It'll come in the update.
So we do asset condition assessments of all of our assets, including our poles, right? But I'll find out when we're doing that next and make sure you're across that.
Jeff.
Kia Greg, Kevin. Haven't heard much from you, Kevin. Don't worry. I'm sure. Glad you're here. I have 4 themes. Probably not going to get through it all today, but I just want to highlight this. Is there any, as you understand it, any impediments on households that want to install hot water heat pumps in terms of consents and so forth? Is there any impediment from that perspective?
From my experience, no. It's a plumber and an electrician and a company go online to say, I'm interested in a hot water heat pump. You do the survey, they come back and say, this is what the cost is, which is fixed, and this is the benefit you'll get and the money you'll save over time. So there's nothing from a consenting point of view. All right,
excellent. That covers that one pretty quickly. I wonder if you could, give a moment, and this might be where you might jump in, Kevin. Obviously, in terms of technological solutions, you want, as an operator of infrastructure, to have stable technology platforms. I think about battery technology and the long feed-in time to create products that you can use that are proven to be stable over a long period of time. Is this an area that you guys are put under pressure in terms of trying to find solutions that work more efficiently or are more effective, especially around battery storage?
Yeah, I'd love to answer that, but I'm more interested to know what Kevin's going to say.
Yes, we are things are progressing really rapidly here, right? And if we come back to the question about buses, when we first were engaging with GW on electric bus charging and saying how much do you need, they would look at the nameplate rating of the bus, multiply it by the number of buses and go, there's your number. The new bus technology, they're only going to charge them twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, right? So things evolve very, very quickly, both in the transport fleet and in the battery fleet. A couple of the solutions we're looking at with KiwiRail are battery technology, and that comes down to the fact that if you look at how costs are recovered, it's recovered by the energy component of the bill, right? So, and a train going through uses energy, stops using energy, and then it's over here, right? So there's not a lot of energy. So recovering that investment when you're doing a traditional investment is really, really difficult, and it kind of becomes a poor tax if you're not careful about it, right? So batteries offer us a solution where instead of spending $20 million on traditional engineering solutions, you can spend money on a battery, flog it for 5 years and put another one in, you know, and charge the battery on a trickle, as opposed to supplying a large amount of power and building infrastructure to supply a large amount of power. So, and the technology is evolving rapidly enough where those things are becoming feasible.
Yeah. And the related, this is the third question, but it's related to that previous one, around those public charging coverage areas. Totally agree. It's easy if they're right next door to train stations in terms of the existing infrastructure. There are obviously some sites around the country where you have, whether they're batteries or capacitors, where they actually store and enable quicker charging of cars. I assume that is also an opportunity from an engineering perspective. They could also enable that very solution in terms of being able to store electricity at a low peak period and create less of a burden on the network when you're trying to have people charge in those sites. Has that been considered?
Yeah, look, it has, and that's where the charge point operators have come around to the ideas of dynamic operating. And the interesting about charge points publicly is, and there's two things around this, is the behaviour of motorists with electric vehicles and where they need to charge is a lot lower than the aspirations of government setting a target for 10,000 charges up and down the country. So we've done, we've been involved with surveys both in the South Island and North Island, and we've looked at how many charge points we need for the number of vehicles in New Zealand that'll be electric by 2030, and it's only 3,500 charges out of the 10,000. So what we've also been able to do is pick locations on the network where those charges should go. I think there's only probably 40 or 50 extra required in Wellington for that. Whereas the charge point operators, and no disrespect, are looking for the sensational sites of where it's really visible and they can brand it. Whereas people coming into Wellington will stop a wee bit earlier and along the motorway pull off and say, we can charge here. The benefit about that is our capacity is already there. We don't have to build anything.
Yeah.
And the thing about that with capacity is we don't have to limit its operation. If the charge point operator can use differential pricing across the areas, then they should be the cheapest charges, because the other ones further in will start to congest, and the price to use that in a congestion period should go up to actually moderate people's behaviour.
Oh, I would love to have a longer conversation about that. I want to put you on some pressure on this last question.
Kevin's question?
Unfortunately, it might not be. In terms of your engagement as a sector, what conversations have you had with the Minister for Regulation around potential regulatory change that would impact the sector in general? Are you able to kind of go into the detail around that? Yeah.
So as far as breaking rules go, we did the first part of that in 2018 post the 2016 Porirua earthquake. We were called in by government to talk about aftershocks. This is on the basis of the Christchurch series in 2010-11. We had engaged with our colleagues in Christchurch around what were the lessons from the Christchurch earthquake. And the biggest thing that they said to us was the operation of their buildings are seismically reinforced. So that was a big thing. They did theirs in the 90s. We hadn't done ours. So we borrowed their structural engineers to come to Wellington to say, what do we need to do? They had offices in Wellington. We introduced those people. We went round and secured 91 buildings up to IL3 in a way that means that the simplicity of the building is a box. It contains equipment, not people. Let's make sure the roof doesn't fall in. So it was very, very simple, very cost effective, around $10 million. We only got to pay the money, we only got to expend the money on the network following the minister stepping in with the commission and saying you need a government policy statement to allow the obligations under the Civil Defence Emergency Management Act for us as a lifelines utility to be included in the Commerce Act decisions of paying this money. So we got the money through. but it took a ministerial policy statement to unlock that for resilience in the network. So you're right, the Commerce Act is very much backward looking, and our price path at the moment is only changing based on what's happened in the past. If you look at 2050, it doesn't see it. So we've got all these issues. We work with Kainga Ora, sharing the Sun project, where we broke most of the rules in the registry around having multiple trading relationships of collecting the solar injection into our network separately and giving it to Kainga Ora people that didn't have solar panels. Now, we were involved in that project because of where we want to go in the future, of breaking those very strict registry market relationships that it sort of sits with the retailer. We want to break it open because if Kevin's got a vehicle at home and I'm working from home and he's next door, I want to shift my solar into his vehicle. If you've got vehicles driving into town that are electric and we can plug them in, the daytime sunshine in those vehicles means they don't have to charge in my network overnight. So we're trying to break open the lack of trading at the low voltage network. High voltage trades beautifully, but it is a market construct we're trying hard to break. It's very unpopular doing this work, but we are trying to open that up. Now, the thing about the solar community, they're really happy about this. So our voice might be a bit boring because we're infrastructure, but when you get dynamic solar people starting to talk about it, the government starts to turn and listen. So hopefully that answers the question.
It does for now. I would love to talk to you more about this. Kia ora.
You can, absolutely.
Taku, have you got anything before you race?
No.
Kia ora,
It's all
Taku.
interesting. Kia ora, how you go?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I opened their building for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just aware you have to go, so.
You've got to go and see your consents department.
Yeah. Okay, Nathan.
Good luck, Taku.
Papakaya up.
Yes. Good luck, Nathan.
Couple of questions from me. Firstly, don't have to go too into the detail, but what's a fluid-filled cable?
Yeah, so back in the 50s and 60s, or probably a bit later than that, the technology of cables changed. So there used to be papers wrapped around a cable which were covered in oil, and that meant that the voltage of the cable, 11,000 volts, could go to 0 volts by the time they wrapped it all the way around. So it became a safe cable to operate and put in the ground. They decided that to get more power through the cables and heat them up even more, paper wasn't going to cut it. So they started using fluid and pumping fluid around as a way of actually cooling the cables. So that's why it's been done. Modern days, plastics don't need the fluid.
Okay, perfect. I've got a question for our sort of rural community around resilience of their power supply. I mean, I think they would fall in the higher end of the average, 35 minutes every 2 years. Is there any work in the pipeline to build up resilience for their network?
Yeah, look, that's a great question. And something that we've taken head on really and gone and engaged with the communities around that, Paikakill Road, Macra, some of the areas. So most of our outages, you're correct, will happen on overhead networks in the communities, largely because of tree management. What we've been able to do is talk to those community groups after a big storm and talk to them about the damage that's occurred on the network, talk about the loss of supply, but then talk about the notices we've sent the community around trimming trees around the power lines before the storm has come in. And then we can talk about the number of notices that were on the countertop at home that have found their way into the waste paper bin and not actioned. And it's a collaborative thing, right? And we have to do that. One of the things about that, again, and with the council's help, it is hard when someone in overalls carrying a chainsaw knocks on your front door and said, it's $89 for me to trim the tree from the power line. They go, well, it's a bit of a surprise, I didn't know that. The idea is once we get into those areas and those situations, it's really trying to get the bang for the buck to actually have, if we're in that situation, is to trim more trees all at once with one part of traffic management. Because doing individual customers with notices is what the tree regulations require, but if you can do it in the community. So if you go to more rural communities, I was looking after a network down south, we talked to the Waimati residents, we just probably can't do it now, big machines with big blades that would just cut hedgerows. And all the farmers would say, yep, we're part of the program, and we'll do 5 kilometres in a couple of weeks, and then everyone would share the cost. Those sorts of things need to be thought about. But it's really vegetation management. I was speaking to the Honourable Chris Bishop about this, and he said, your network's not very resilient. I said, not to 190 kilometre hour winds, Minister, with trees hitting lines. I said, it's never going to be, and I can't make the network stronger. Resilience is what happens when the network was built. We may have different standards now if we rebuilt it, but you've still got poles and you've still got trees. So either I underground the network, which is a 10 times factor more cost, not very popular, or I scorch earth the trees around it. Now, that doesn't work either because the trees are coming from 30, 40 metres away. They're breaking branches, they're coming, hitting the lines. Mostly the lines can come back up. It's when the trees across the road fall through the line on the other side of the road because they're tall. Very, very difficult to manage. The thing is about resilience is trying to make community resilient so they can ride through the outages and where they can go to get the things they need, although they may have to go back to homes without power. That's a much better return on that investment of creating a hub in that rural community people can go to, charge their phones, get a hot drink, and those sorts of things. We think our investment's better targeted to that, Marais and those sorts of areas, than targeting to try and rebuild a network even though we've got trees. It's a tricky one. If you can help me with the answer, I'll be indebted.
I don't think for the population along Pycock Hill Road, for example, to put all the cables underground it would not be feasible. I don't think.
The good news about it, though, it's a very engaged community, and they're very, very, very helpful, saying, "Oh, we know some landowners who are refusing to let you on to trim the trees," and we go. And the community power of them chatting to their neighbourhood, not the person wanting to take some money off them, has been quite effective.
Nice, awesome. My last sort of line of questioning, I'm just for council, are we still heating our pools with gas or are we fully electric now?
Oh, Jim.
So we've just done the conversion to Rapraha. We're in the process of completing it, and that will be fully electric. I think we've got a little bit of gas for some cooking. And we're in this currently in the early stages of scoping out the conversion to electricity for Cannons Creek.
Okay, no, thank you.
Thank you, Moira.
Thank you. I'm sort of mulling over private good, public good arguments in my head when it comes to differential charging. But my question is really around the whether you have engaged on the issue of the ratepayers assistance scheme that's the proposal going to government, because it seems to me that the electric heat pumping systems and arguably solar systems could be utilising that scheme if we can get it off the ground. Have you been part of those conversations?
We have, but not directly. So we are very much aligned with that. So we're happy. We've hosted Electrify the Hut, where Mike Casey's team came through Electrify Aotearoa and talked about what they were doing. We talked about the wider nature of how that is very much supportive of what we're trying to do going forward, because the problem with gas is you get locked in. It's very hard to get out of it, because the cost of changing appliances is very, very high. We can bring heat pumps down from $16,000 to $5,000 with supplier selection, but when you start looking at home heating, it's getting into that $15,000, and that's a heat pump. It's efficient, but it's a step too far. So that ratepayers assistance is really where that should be targeted.
That your only one more? Yep. Ross.
Question for Kevin, is it, Ross?
No, I've got scores of questions, but I won't.
No.
Nathan asked about rural areas and specifically Pawatahanui. I know you're still going to talk to, I think, Pawatahanui Residents Association at some stage in the future, because what you were saying, I'm not sure. I mean, I haven't heard that reflected back through the Residents Association, so I don't know how far that message is spread.
No problem. We're happy to do that.
Yeah, I think they're in contact with Wellington Electricity.
There has been. It's one of our worst performing feeders. We've got a ranking.
My second question was, you can do those sort of things about trees and all the rest of it, ongoing problem.
Yep.
Technically, what else is there you can do in Pawatahanui that?
So there's
cost effective.
There's been a number of jobs done already in Pawatahanui.
Yep.
There's parts of the line that were weak have been rebuilt. They've been made stronger. We've put in additional switches so that we can. If you've got a very long line that goes for kilometres and it breaks at one point,
I
whole lot's
understand.
out.
Any further
So-
plans for switching?
So we've kind of maximised that out, and the engagement's really with the the landowner and getting the trees sorted out now.
Great.
There
It'd be
has
good
been
if you
engagement
can
and it's ongoing.
provide that information back. Yeah. So that's the first question. The other one was, I guess can do this outside. Heat pump hot water cylinders, and you talked about the potential savings in terms of megawatts of everyone. What about home heating? People going off gas. Surely that's another addition to the network that will happen as well, potentially.
Yeah,
As people go off gas.
Absolutely. And I think
Started already, but
yeah, look, it has. And I think heat pump technology is going to be, in the climate we have in the centre of New Zealand, a practical way of actually managing that through. So the things about people's affordability is they don't trade off comfort or convenience. So if those things are met by whatever the new technology is, then that's absolutely fine. So heat pumps are a lot less energy intensive than the traditional ways of the 2 kilowatt heaters and those sorts of things. So it's really making sure there is a market that can actually, and the Ratepayers Association, making that less of a hurdle for people to go through.
okay. So I just have a concern about hot water heat pumps. What's their longevity?
They're about
Even at $5,000.
it's between 10 years and 15 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and look, and that's a fair question, Ross, because a lot of the new technology that is being built is built down to a price. Solar, batteries. I was the owner of a 2013 Leaf in 2015, very early battery chemistry, and it really only got to 120,000 kilometres before I couldn't use the car on any journey greater than 50 k's. The technology's improved, but you're right, the early adoption is going to mean there's a shorter period.
Josh.
Cheers, thanks. A couple of questions here. So the first was around, you mentioned the opportunity for coordination around water infrastructure. What's your early engagement been like with Te Aki Wai? What does that relationship look like?
I think we've just got the letter from Te Aki Wai about, hey, we're Te Aki Wai, we're going to do this thing. So it's very early. The good news is we have talked with the predecessor, Wellington Water, about some of the projects. It is a very tricky dance to coordinate. I think the lessons from Te Ararapu that we did are quite useful for us to then use in other projects, because Kevin ran the project. There was largely no electrical people in the project. It was all civil people that we used. And the fact about that is we didn't appear on site. So the only construction equipment were councils, and all we had to do was go through a training program of how to put these plastic ducts beside the water pipe. So we largely were very light touch, hence the huge savings if we'd done it traditionally. Any comments on that, Kevin?
I think we commented in the slides that we had great support from council, and I think it wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for people in council staff actually wanting to make that happen. There was a young lad here, Ben, who worked tirelessly to bring those things together, and Jim effectively helped us get it across the line. So, it would have been quite difficult to wrangle Wellington Water by ourselves. So, yeah.
So to answer your question, we do need to keep on with Wellington Water, Te Aki Wai. We're lending one of our comms people across to Te Aki Wai. He said he's leaving us, but I'm sure he'll come back at some stage. And he has a very good understanding of the electricity sector. So I'm thinking that when Howie Smith goes across, he'll influence, look, there are opportunities here to actually do these things. The key thing for us is to think non-traditionally about it and talk about, if you're digging up this road, these are the routes we want plastic ducts to be added by the way we did the project we've just finished. So we're trying to pay a duct cost. Trench profiles, we know what they look like, and it's the light touch. Here's the sheet of paper you need to include in all your projects. And here's the map we've coloured up diligently with our crayons, say where we want them put in. So we're trying to do a very light touch on that and pay what we need to pay to make that happen.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, a couple of my other questions have been asked, but I do have a few quick runs around solar. So you've talked about how we're about 3% at the moment. Is that residential specifically, or all properties? What does commercial look like?
They're largely residential. Commercial are tending to band into areas that are looking to collaborate across a number of industries, but still not a lot of push into commercial. Commercial gas is something that we're talking to the commercial industrials in the next month about what their plans are to exit gas. And that's, for us, going to be the challenge affordability in their mind at the moment, rather than adding solar.
Okay. On that about 3% level, how are we, that's at a region-wide level,
Yes.
How are we comparing regionally and to international partners around solar uptake?
I think well, it's been something that's exercised my mind for a while as to why the solar uptake in the region of Wellington is so low compared nationally.
Yeah. Yeah, the weather doesn't help.
Well, that's right. If someone's going to drill a hole in your roof, you kind of go, not so sure about that, and you're putting a bit of a sail on there. I think the issue is that if you've got gas, you've got a connection and a cost. You've got electricity, a connection and a cost. Do you want to put a third energy element on your home?
Yeah.
So it's probably not working out for most people, unless you've got discretionary capital you can want to put into that. There are some risks with solar around as it builds out, and there's no diversity with solar. The sun comes up, it's all on. And as we've seen with some of our sister companies, Melbourne and South Australia, are very problematic for networks. When we've done the calculation of solar penetration in Wellington, once you get to 30%, there's no more room for more solar. So what we don't have in New Zealand, but we do have in our Australian networks, is government policy that says the lines company can turn the solar down or turn it off, and then they can turn it back on. None of our solar inverters on this network or in New Zealand are any visibility to the lines company. So we are unfortunately on the naughty step with Mike Casey, Electricity Authority, of not agreeing to take solar to 10 kilowatts injection. Now, that's because there's no control. If you can provide, management of that solar unit that it can turn down, then you can go to 15 kilowatts. We don't mind.
Yeah.
Because that 3% doesn't hurt our network. And when it gets to 30%, then those people without solar, logically, will be paying for a network upgrade for the people with solar. So you've got to really be careful around not creating a cross-subsidisation. So we're trying to manage that through. We're trying to find ways of learnings from what's happened in Australia and feed it back into policy here to do that. So there's a task force that's got some ideas around that next year, which will try and influence how that goes. So we've gone back to the Electricity Authority. We've had 2 meetings with them, and they've come out with their policy now, which does talk about interoperability of solar turning down to get the ability to stay high.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. You've actually just proactively answered my next question, so I've just got the last one.
Doesn't happen very often.
So, so 30% is what we think we
That's
can
what we've
potentially
modelled.
get
Yep,
to.
that's right.
So could you talk to us a little bit about what does that pathway to 30% look like? How do we get there? And in terms of what length of time and what needs to be done. And in particular, you talked about this messy middle with electrification, and there's cost in the middle. It's better for everyone in the long term. What can we do, and what are you thinking about to help us bridge that messy middle?
Yeah, that's another 43 minutes, Chair. Look, that's their challenge. So what we've been doing is try to look at discussing with the Commission points of least regret. So if you invest in the big end of town that needs the capacity to allow all of the small end to connect, then that's where we're going to put our money at the moment. It's only probably 25% of what we'd like to spend. If you let the engineers come up with a number, they'll say, Greg, you need to spend 1.2 billion. All our life cycle model and our probability of failure, it's 1.2 billion. I go, that's lovely. But when it does fail, what's the impact? And we work our way back and say, it's not economic for me to invest that right now. So we bring that all the way back. The key thing about those investments is trying to set trigger points. So we've gone into mapping our network as a heat map, and we've done it at a 4,500 transformer level, and we've modelled what will happen under each scenario: solar, EV, gas exit. And the modelling, which was done out of University of Canterbury, has shown that out of our 4,500 transformers, there's 200 that are of interest in the next 5 years. So what we're doing now is monitoring those transformers in more of a millisecond approach. We don't see them at the moment, they're just a transformer. But putting them live and digitalising those transformers back into a system that we can look at the demand, and then we're going to open up the demand profile with the retailer and work out what's causing that congestion. And then we can ask the retailer to talk to their customers about, is there any operationality of actually shifting load out of that 4-hour period in winter? So that gives that least regrets, no investment. When the customer decides that they do want to charge in that period, that's fine, then we have to upgrade. We'll be putting a price signal into the intermediate period, so customers do see the cost of that upgrade if they can shift away. So once we set these trigger points, we say to the Commission, if we can set trigger points of when this happens and it's acceptable that we're not looking at replacing 4,500 transformers based on our heat map model in 2050, or we can shift that back to more of a real-time model, or when those trigger points are set, then we limit our investment on our network. The key thing about that sort of goes to Councillor Moira's question, is should everyone in the network, as it is traditionally done, pay for only this 200 people upgrading? And that's where you start getting to differential pricing. If we're having to force the network in one area because people want to pay for more capacity, should that capacity be spread across everyone as it does traditionally now? So those sorts of thinking we've got in our network. It is tricky because it does make the network, the financing and the planning and the digitalisation more direct. So we're working with a chorus unit called Neura, and they're starting to digitalise the performance of those transformers so we can see the pattern and then start to forecast what's called an operating envelope to say to the people, the 200 customers, the operating envelope for the next 3 weeks means that the price outside your normal demand profile is going to triple. The price under your normal demand profile stays the same. And that's around social equity. The people that aren't forcing into demand in the demand period don't have to pay a higher price.
Could I, sorry, just to clarify within that, so assuming we manage to get most of those things right, I'm thinking about the move to solar, and in particular with gas going offline, the spike we're going to see from that. If we get everything right, how quickly do you think we can start to approach that 30%? And
Yep.
can we do it fast enough to substantially mitigate some of those spikes we're seeing from gas going offline?
Yeah, so solar is not my choice. It's a market choice of what the affordability is for the consumers. The solar is not a silver bullet. It only delivers about 20% of what your household will do during a day. So you've got to be really careful about saying it's going to solve everything. Solar, to be used efficiently on the network, needs to be stored, then re-released between 5 and 9 at night in the winter. So that's adding another $10,000. I think I saw in the paper this morning you could buy a 14 kilowatt hour battery for $3,600 from Toolshed. Fantastic.
What?
Yeah, pretty good. But by the time you install that, well, Ross has sort of hit the nail on the head.
yeah.
How long will that last for? Because you're cycling it every day to provide energy into your home to avoid the peak charge on that time of use charging we've got current at the moment, hopefully passed on by the retailer. So you have to be very careful with solar that it does some of the work. You still have to have plan B and C about the rest of your house, the other 75%, how are you going to do that? So you've got to be very, very careful. If I needed solar to get through winter where I am, I'd need 4 neighbours plus my house to have solar to actually get a battery that's large enough for me to sail through winter without having much support.
$10K for a Tesla battery, yeah.
Yeah, well, Tesla's a funny one. If you read page 5, you'll talk about the battery capacity after 5 years is half.
Yeah.
So you've got to be really, really careful.
do.
You've done your economics, but in 5 years, you've only got half the capacity that your battery had cycling it twice a day. So there's a real issue around, I think we talked about, Ross talked about how long does it last. On day 1, everything's fantastic. Year 1, everything's great. Year 7, but like my 2013 Leaf, doesn't quite get to me where I need to get to. So battery technology is great. It's really improving. But you've still got to have, I think, choices across a number of options and have them all in play.
Yeah. Kathleen?
Thanks, Greg. Kevin, you've talked about savings at particularly Waitangiroa Link Road, working with Wellington Water. Can you clarify the savings that you identified? I think it was $1 million. Does that go specifically to, when you say it goes to users, is that users in our area or is that the wider region of Wellington?
So those were our savings. The Wellington Water also made savings, but we couldn't quite figure those out for ourselves. So that is a saving. It's almost an avoided cost, right? That project would have cost me, if I did it myself, another $1 million. That would have gone in our RAB, and that would have been spread across all Wellington electricity customers, basically.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, thank you. You spoke about the roading corridor and the limitations and the time from 9:30 to 3:30. Question, is that the general, a usual timeframe that you get, and what are the reasons for that?
Largely schools, not having large line trucks on roads when school and people are getting to and from school or to and from work, so it is around traffic congestion. It's a general rule, and there will be roads, main roads, that should stay in and still apply. But it applies to all roads, so we should say there should be secondary roads and tertiary roads that we can have much longer hours on. The amount of work we need to do will probably start working into weekends. Now, we just need to sort of think about that. You know, the longer we can spend with the site established and not having to disestablish, the more work we get done, the cheaper it is. So there are the sorts of things we've got to really sort of work with councils on. How far can we push that? Other thing we're trialling is sites with traffic lights. So cars roll up, they see a traffic light, and what it does is removes most of the traffic management personnel from the site and just uses technology. People are used to seeing what a red light means and what a green light means. Unfortunately, cones will still be there, but we're trying to set that up to depopulate the site. Because if you look at traffic management, there's multiple trucks, there's STMSs, and there's people on stop-go. So you can get 5 people on a site that really aren't productive for what your work's doing, but they're keeping people safe from a traffic point of view. Now, you're from a dead-end road with only the 5 people that have got houses on that road. It's a lot of overhead to actually try and spread into the cost of the job. So we think if we can take that out, we can actually do more work.
Mike wants to answer that first as well.
So we're actually the road controlling authority, so it's on us to do that. And in fact, it's these guys here that actually do that at the moment. And we are already going toward road closures rather than lane closures. But one of the main things that we focus on when we manage that is inconvenience to motorists. As you will know from your own personal experience and those in the community, that is the single biggest thing that actually impacts on us managing the kind of work that Greg does. People get furious and some of their behaviour is awful when we do traffic management. So we think about this really carefully, probably more than you do, because all the vitriol comes back to us. But that's probably the single biggest issue. And over the next 10 years, as we upgrade our water networks and our electricity networks, it's going to be a big deal for everybody across Wellington region, actually. Go, Kevin.
Go for it.
If I can just jump in, we've been, you've probably all heard about Riverlink that Hutt City are doing, and there's been a lot of traffic congestion in Lower Hutt. A lot of that's our work at the moment. You know, the stop bank work and NZTA's work will follow us. And it's been a really good process with Hutt City, and I think there's going to be a lot of learnings coming out of that, because we have had extended hours, we've had total road closures, we've worked at night. We haven't pleased anybody.
We've had gridlock, but works better.
Yeah,
and faster.
but the trade-offs are we're either there for a long time or a short, painful time. There is no good time, you know. Yeah.
Kathleen, have you got another one?
I do, yeah. Okay, so you talked about this electric hot water heat pump as a solution to when gas is coming off. I don't know a lot about this appliance. Is it to replace like the Infinity or hot water cylinder, or is it also like heating in the house?
Yeah. So it is purely for hot water. So at the moment, if you've got instant gas hot water, effectively you've got a
That's the Infinity for.
yeah, a Burns co or an Infinity on the side of your house. Got pipes coming in, got a power supply, and you've got hot water as soon as your tap turns on. So it's only for hot water. So this goes back to the traditional tank as you had with an electric hot water cylinder, but it normally will be outside because it's proximity of where your gas burner unit is at the moment. It just swaps out. You've got a tall tank, as tall as Kevin, and effectively it's got a heat pump which uses the temperature in the air to actually then heat the water cylinder. So that's only running at 0.5 kilowatt. That's all it uses for an energy demand, where our traditional electric hot water cylinders will run at 3 or 3.5. So it's a very big saving on the demand on our network. And the hot water's just as hot. I was very surprised. I thought it wouldn't be as good. But
You mentioned it was just okay when you talked about it.
did I? You had a very good memory. On the record, the water was very good.
Okay.
Very hot.
But probably
Slightly
not the
hotter than
same
gas.
pressure, is what you're going to say.
Same pressure, yeah,
Same
no,
pressure?
no difference. No difference.
Yeah.
So it works more than okay?
It
Jesus.
does. It's I was surprised that it was hotter than the gas system because I thought this won't be as hot.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I didn't quite follow when you were saying right now it costs 15K, but it could cost 5K. How do you get from 15K to 5K?
Yeah, it's really markets like Australia that have got these in such a large bulk. There is supply discount for having so many. So a supplier in New Zealand has tapped into that market and said we can get the same rate into New Zealand based on the volume of units being used in Australia.
So are you saying to shop around for that supplier? Is that what you mean?
Absolutely, you should shop around. And it's like we've got to be so careful in this conversation that we shouldn't be promoting any appliance in people's homes. We have no dog in this fight. We have no skin in this game. We are being selfish by saying that uses half a kilowatt. We would love you to use that one, but we shouldn't be promoting a brand. However, at the Home and Garden Show, I'm sure there'll be some stands with these devices on there. And maybe I'll see you there.
Yes, maybe you will. Last question was, you're still on this topic of the hot water heat pump. You were saying it'd be good to encourage this behaviour, and I got the impression it was from us to kind of help with that. Did you mean? I'm wondering what that looks like. Were you meaning sort of what Councillor Lawler was speaking about in terms of the ratepayers scheme, or what does that look like?
I think it's trying to lower the hurdle for homeowners when we start to see the gas scarcity really push the price. So if you look at per quarter, gas has risen in the last year by double digits. So we're aware of that. When we speak to our gas colleagues about that, they say there's plenty of gas, Greg, that's not going to run out for domestic. Don't worry about it. What we're seeing when I speak to the installers is they're doing 5 of these a week. And I don't know what gas plumbers are normally busy at, but they're saying, this is fantastic, this is really, really good. The idea of trying to create an education of buying the cheaper electric hot water cylinder, it's not 16,000, it's probably less, probably 12 in the market at the moment, is most households will go for that if they have to buy something. The capital cost of that is tremendous for a house who is finding it hard at the moment. The idea of the ratepayer scheme is to try and lower that capital upfront cost and operationalise it over a period of time. We need that on the hot water heat pump to take the 3.5 kilowatts down to half a kilowatt by choosing the other appliance, not choosing the electric one, choosing the heat pump, which uses less demand. We then can push out investments on upgrading our network and push that right out so we don't get congestion at that time. They do come, and the teenagers will love this, they do come with an app so you can actually talk to your heat pump from the comfort of your office. Now, why you'd want to do that, I've got no idea, but there are different modes you can run them at. So there's
On cold while your teenager's in there?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Luckily, my little girl turned 30 yesterday, so she's got her own hot water to worry about, not me.
Kathleen, sorry.
No, that's
it?
Yeah.
Okay, our very last, Kylie.
Thank you, Greg. You have a lot of energy about energy. So this
That's good.
presentation has been very interesting and engaging. First thing is also I am Team Pawatahanui, so I support my fellow Northern Ward councillors here in regards to upgrades but I also understand the tree maintenance issue. I think last time there was a major power cut, I think in around Grays Road, there was issues about whose tree it was that destroyed the lines, and I think that's in where lies some of the issues. Is it on private land? Is it on council's land? So I can understand the frustrations from that point of view. Just some feedback. As a resident of Plymouton, we've had quite a few replacements in our area from ageing infrastructure. And the communication and the service we've received from Wellington Electricity are very good. I'm quite upfront about things like that. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that we've had good. It's been good there. Okay, transitioning away from gas. and you mentioned the disconnection cost is quite high. As this is going to be literally forced upon residents, are they expected to pay that disconnection cost?
So we don't have gas.
No.
It's not our network.
No.
So it's.
But are they expected to?
That's the price in the market at the moment, which I'm most surprised at. And again, I think from a regulation point of view, there needs to be some pressure put on the fact of that's such a high price. So I think that's the issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and last thing is you asked as a council that we help you with community engagement.
Thank you. We're coming to see
which
Porirua
is-
Nui, so that's in my list.
But that's where I was going to say there are a lot of community groups who are already very proactive and well engaged. I would
Yep.
like to see you guys engaged with those kind of more vulnerable communities.
Absolutely.
Which I'm sure our amazing staff will give you the contact.
Absolutely, and that's the reason for raising it, is there is groups that we can't get to, but the council has better communication than we are. It goes back to the issue that customers generally want to speak to their retailers. They don't really want to speak to their lines company unless the power's off, and the power goes back on, that's the end of the relationship.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Just look,
Yes, you can.
we've heard a lot lately about heading into a La Nina weather pattern.
Yep.
Now, that'll be good for solar, but do you see that as any real problem for you guys?
So if I can recast the question, you mean hotter, stiller conditions? Yeah. So heat for us is, because we're a winter peaking network, that's okay. If we got more solar and we're up around that 15, 18%, then the sun comes and turns all the solar on at once. We don't have a management system that can turn that down to keep the supply on. So that's our risk. We have to then keep working with the regulators around putting in policy that allows us the ability to do that. So yeah, it's tricky. Sorry, Kevin.
Grass and scrub fires. That becomes an issue at those times too, and we had a recent one. Our most recent one was out in Porirua here, Te Tahi Bayway, and we've been looking at our designs of our lines around that and how we can make that better. But I think control of burn-offs and again the community and the rural community especially around fires is really important.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in.
Thank you.
We are stopping now for a 20-minute break for morning tea, and we'll be back at 10 to 11. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Our next briefing is the emergency management team. So we have Sam and John. Sorry, I'll leave it to you. Would you like questions at the end or going through?
Happy for questions at the end. I am mindful that the presentation is a bit dense, so if people have questions throughout, I'm happy for that too.
Okay, thank you.
Morena koutou. It is good to be back. For those who don't know me, my name is Sam Bishop. I am the Manager for Community Resilience at Remo. I'm also the Group Recovery Manager for the Wellington CDM Group. So fairly busy over the last few weeks with a number of our events, and I'll let you introduce yourself, John.
Good morning, John Pine. I'm part of the Remo team. I'm domiciled out here at Porirua. I work up the hill at Reha Street. I'm part of the operational readiness and response, so helping train our people and a little bit of planning and stuff there in preparation. Thank you.
So Fetu Bennett, who is our John's other partner in crime here for Porirua, would have been here today, but is his day off. But just a note, he is the other Porirua emergency management advisor that we have on deck, who I know has some relations with a number of you already. So the purpose of today is we're going to take you through a fairly quick 40-ish minute presentation. Originally these were intended for 3 to 4 hours, so we've brought that right down to a nice concise version for you today. And really the purpose of it, 2 hours. And the purpose of it today is to help go through what your role as elected members are in shaping how resilient Porirua is before the next emergency comes, but to also give you a bit of a clearer picture about how the emergency management system operates here in the wider Wellington region. Oh gosh. So there are 3 things that I've been asked to present on today. The first being a briefing on emergency management, so I'll try to keep this fairly high level. Somewhat entertaining. An overview of the emergency management bill. So there is an updated emergency management bill that is currently going through Parliament at the moment. I'll give you a brief on what that means and what the changes are, and then the so what of it. And then lastly, I've been asked to specifically talk about the mahi that Remo and Council are doing with the Pacifica and Māori communities here in Porirua, which we can talk about quite easily as well. And if there's anything else you want me to talk to as we go through this presentation, just feel free to ask, and I will do my best to answer those questions. So really quickly, I thought I'd start by talking about who Remo is. I'm mindful that not everybody is aware of who Remo is and who funds it. So Remo, we are a semi-autonomous organisation that is funded by all 9 councils in the Wellington region, and the proportion of that funding is based on population. So each council pays based on what population they have. We have about 36 staff working across 3 primary groups, one being operational readiness and response, so John's department, so those are things like EOCs and responding to events. The second business unit is mine, being the community resilience and recovery space, so those are Fetu Bennett and going out there into the communities, working with them to foster social cohesion and build a better connection between the community response and our official response. And we have a third business unit, which is pretty much a small supplementary support unit that establishes the systems across all of the EOCs, our little IT kind of stuff. The purpose of Remo is really to strengthen the Wellington region's emergency management system, again, enabling communities and our partners alike to prepare for and manage those emergencies that we've actually been going through over the last couple of weeks. In terms of what Remo delivers, so again, these are all part of the annual plan, which I'm told by Councillor Marshall. He's read through quite effectively, so thank you. So we deliver 9 core services across our organisation. That includes things like a 24/7 duty component. So our organisation runs the 24/7 duty officer system on behalf of the whole region, primarily on behalf of our councils. So that's things like a 2 a.m. tsunami advisory from the Pacific Tsunami Warning Centre, and we kick off to tell our councils that something is on the horizon and we might need to be kicking something into gear. We also deliver things like community resilience through my respective team, workforce development, so that is the training that we provide to councils to help develop their capability. We'll talk a bit more through the slides as we go through, and a number of other areas that I won't go into the detail, but a lot more detail is part of our annual plan, but again, happy to talk through anything that people might have questions throughout today. As we know, the recent government has made some changes of late around what emergency management means within the local government context. And this was a fairly recent one, I think last year, where emergency management, or civil defence emergency management, sorry, as it is still called, as the legislation hasn't changed, is one of the top 5 core services of local authorities. Now, that's not to say that Remo has been delegated to deliver this on behalf of councils in totality. No, it's rather acknowledging that it is not just Remo and the services that we deliver, it is the land use planning, it is the community facilities, it is the community engagement that councils do. That is also emergency management when you look at it from a holistic point of view. It's not just the developing capabilities that Remo focuses on and fostering those partnerships, it's also the council mechanisms that enable or create various risks as part of internal processes, so where people can and can't build and how facilities are decided in terms of what we put into them, whether you have solar panels or the like. So it's a much broader conversation than just Remo. So in terms of the Wellington CDM Group, we often use this to refer to ourselves. So the Wellington CDM Group is basically everybody who is involved in emergency management, be it at local, regional or national level. So that involves the 9 councils across the Wellington region, are all part of the Wellington CDM Group. Our emergency services are part of that particular group as well. Lifeline utilities, so again, they have specific responsibilities under legislation that they need to meet, which includes ensuring they have business continuity planning and ensuring that they're able to stand themselves up when required. It also includes welfare agencies. So one of the core responsibilities of councils under the National CDM Plan is the delivery of welfare services. Really, that should be reframed to coordination of welfare services, because a number of these entities actually do the doing when it comes to big emergencies. And from a council or EOC point of view, it's really making sure that those agencies are present in the community if there was a Porirua event, for example, and council coordinating what that needs to look like across the respective impacted areas. But most importantly, the CDM Group involves all of our communities. They're really the key stakeholder that we're trying to plan for, prepare for, and respond to emergencies on behalf of. Really what we're trying to do is to minimise the disruptions that they face, but also to foster the capabilities within communities to help them to be able to respond, to help them realise I'll flip it around to help the official side realise that the communities are actually responding probably a lot faster than we are, and how do we tap into that energy that is already there in the communities, but also work together. Often, if you read many of the reviews over the last decade, we don't do it well in terms of the official response and the community response, and so this has become highlighted as part of the recent reviews, be it Sir Jerry Mataparai's review of all reviews, where it highlighted the system, so not Porirua, the system does an abysmal job of working with our communities when it comes to emergency management. And of course other entities. So in terms of our governance structure, so this will tie off who we are as a system. So obviously right at the top we've got the Joint Committee, so that's all the mayors of our councils, which Mayor Baker is both part of and the chair of the Joint Committee. So they are really the final decision makers when it comes to what it is that we do here in the wider Wellington region. Beneath them sits the coordinating executive group, so those are all of the chief executives from our 9 councils, and it's not often the chief executive, but a senior executive from some of our partner agencies, emergency services, I believe is the district commanders who turn up to those. So this is the forum that makes a lot of decisions and directs Remo and the wider CDM space about where our focus should be, but also whether what we're focusing on is what the wider CDM group will benefit from. And then beneath that is more of the operational governance level. So this is the Local Government Emergency Management Collective. This is the forum where Sandra Rogers, your emergency management manager, sits to make sure that operationally we're doing what councils want us to be delivering either regionally or in each specific TA's area of concern. So I guess moving into the crux of the PowerPoint presentation, I mentioned Sir Jerry Mataparai's review. It was extremely blunt, to be put it quite fairly. It was quite clear that emergency management was not fit for purpose. The interesting thing about that is everything in those reports, there was no surprise to the people who have been working in emergency management at all. For the last decade, the system seems to be repeating a lot of the same mistakes, whether it be not working well with communities, not doing enough work in behind the scenes to prepare councils, some councils not putting in place the systems to so that staff can go and respond to the event without having to do their BAU at the same time. It's having the systems in place where staff are recognised for doing the mahi, whether it be beforehand or afterwards in terms of looking after their well-being and those sorts of things. There was a litany of issues that have been found from that particular review that much of the sector has been focused towards rectifying. So if you look at the likes of Auckland City Council, they obviously went through the Auckland floods and went through a fairly abysmal time, but a lot of lessons have come from that, and they've put a lot of things in place to help them not go into that space again. This is what this review and periods of reviews is really what's driving a lot of the changes that's coming into the sector over the last couple of years that we're all trying to focus on. As part of that, it also identified a number of challenges that we've decided to focus on as a region. Obviously, the first one, increasing exposure to hazards and risks. The last couple of weeks is probably a good reminder of that. Since I've been at Remo, we've had 7 events that we've had to respond to across the region, whether it be Kapiti, the Wairarapa, or most recently the Wellington region with a severe red warning and a state of emergency that was declared, which was the first time in a very long time, I think, that we've ever had to make that sort of call outside of COVID. The system doesn't reflect a true partnership with Māori and mana whenua. So that has been constant for the past decade since the 2017 TAG review, which first highlighted that we don't have good partnerships with mana whenua. Again, the system as opposed to Porirua City Council. There's also insufficient levels of community preparedness. Survey after survey that we conduct, whether it be within our region or the national survey, highlights the lack of movement in community preparedness and some backwards movements in some things that you would presume shouldn't be happening. For example, there is an increasing number of people who believe that they're going to hear sirens about a tsunami incoming, and why that has increased over the last few years is a bit of a misnomer, but we are starting to observe some of these things. A good indication for the Wellington region, for example, is we are increasing the number of people who understand what a community emergency hub is and what those basic steps are when it comes to emergencies. So we do see a positive movement in some spaces, but we are seeing some negative movement in other areas as well. Of course, of recent years, it's been quite difficult to prepare from a household point of view when you have a cost of living crisis and a whole bunch of other issues that you're trying to contend with, and then being told you need to prepare 7 days worth of food, water, and all sorts of other things. So there are some real challenges that a lot of communities do suffer when it comes to community preparedness. It's not a black and white type of area. Immature risk management capability. So again, that was highlighted as part of the reviews that we don't really manage risk that well, whether it be preparing for the risk or how we implement controls as part of managing those risks. Funding and resource constraints, so that's come through quite strongly. Again, that's not just from the national level about what funding they provide. I think it was last month's event, or perhaps the month before the event, when it comes to recovery, we were advised by NEMA that there's no more money in the pot for councils to tap into when it comes to applying for recovery funding, that it was tapped out within 2 months of the year. And so again, that's a reflection of the increasing number of hazards that keep coming through, and then the increasing complexity of these hazards and the destruction that a lot of it has caused. And then obviously councils across the board trying to look for what help there might be from central government. Inadequate response and recovery capability and capacity, I've referred to that before. So part of the review highlighted that some councils who went through the response through Gabriel didn't put enough effort into making sure that they've got enough staffing to be able to do the mahi, but also the right capability. So it's not you, Jane, library reception, who have never stepped foot in the EOC, go on up there and do your best. It's a lot of that was happening where people weren't being set up to succeed, to be able to thrive in that environment. It's a very difficult environment. If you've ever had, I was going to say the opportunity, no. If you've ever been in that, it's stressful, it's high pressure, it's very ambiguous, and it's not for everyone. But what we need to do as a system is to make sure that the people who do put their hands up to go into those sorts of environments are given the best possible chance to succeed in that, whether it be the comfort in their training or the confidence as part of it becoming muscle memory that you know just what to do when you're put into that situation. Difficult when you've got a dual role, where again you're asking council officers who have BAU roles and other avenues of council to then shift and pivot to be able to operate successfully in an emergency environment. Sometimes they're two very different systems that you have to try and understand. The acronyms alone are difficult. There's also unrealistic system expectations, and this is going to get even worse. What we are seeing is communities their expectations of the system is just becoming higher and higher. The more we get into this, the more frustration there is about what we're doing, and the greater their expectation that where is civil defence. We were at a Stokes Valley meeting the other week with council, and it was very clear from their communities that they had a higher expectation of council about what they were needing to be doing over there in Stokes Valley. And so we are starting to see it quite prominently here with communities who are continuing to be hit over and over and over. And we're starting to see it in the Wairarapa as well, with a number of those communities who have gone through a lot of events over the last 3 months alone, including 2 recovery transition periods across their district. And then lastly, and again, this ties to my comment that we've been in this rigmarole for about 10 years, where we've been told the same thing about what needs to improve, but progress of improving that system hasn't really been that prominent. It also doesn't help as part of the national changes, where you have differing governments who have differing points of view about what should and shouldn't be in legislation. And we've had this emergency management bill go through 3 different governments now, with 3 different opinions about what should and shouldn't be in it. And so we've got another election on the horizon. The bill was supposed to be going through Parliament, and again, who knows where the bones might fall on this one. One of the key highlights as part of all of this is that New Zealand is considered one of the second riskiest country in the world in terms of insurance. Wellington is considered, I think, the second or third riskiest region when it comes to natural disasters or hazards, second only behind Westport, I believe, who have a higher risk profile compared to Wellington. So again, the events that happened last week really reiterates the fact that we are in a high-risk environment. We have been, I was going to use the L word, we have been fortunate to not have had many incidents over the last few years, but of course last week really highlighted the real risk profile that we sit in. This also reflects that of recent years, the events have become much more complex, much more destructive. In 2022, the cost of insurance reached about $350 million. The year later, which was Cyclone Gabriel and all of the rest, it exceeded $3 billion. Already into, I think, 4 months of the year, we had already eclipsed the $350 million mark that was set in 2022. So the insurance space is really probably going to be driving a lot of decisions that we make going down into the future. And we've already heard insurers saying that they are going to be pulling out of certain areas and certain insurance types, whether it be seismic or earthquake insurance or flood insurance. They have laid it quite clear that they will be reviewing the risk profile of various regions in the country. And so insurance is going to be a big factor when it comes to figuring out what we actually have to do in this space. And it also ties into the fact that we are seeing much more emergencies hitting our country over the last 10 years, 15 years since 2011. Obviously, we've seen a significant rise in impacts. And the orange bar, that's actually undercooked because that was a few months ago. So that is going to be a lot higher now. So these are days in response across the country, days in emergency management, across the country. And so, again, we're not even halfway through the year, and we can see that there's the potential for that to continue to rise. Before I go into the EM bill, are there any questions? I feel like I've killed the mood a little bit with some of these.
Doesn't look like there's any hands up, so keep going.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
So really quickly about the Emergency Management Bill, as I've mentioned, it's currently going through Select Committee stage. There's 5 key areas that, so this is the party line of what the bill is going to deliver for us. It's supposed to strengthen the role of communities and iwi Māori in emergency management, provide clearer responsibilities at all 3 levels, enable higher minimum standards for emergency management to be delivered across those 3 levels, minimise disruption to essential services, so that's setting up greater expectations of lifeline utilities to be able to give guarantee that they can actually do what they are tasked to do under those various legislations, but also ensuring all of the agencies that have a role to play in emergency management have the tools to do their job. So that's things like setting up templates that can be utilised across the whole country, setting up systems where if you go from Auckland to Wellington to Christchurch, are utilising the same response tools and the same response systems. So fairly ambitious stuff in the bill. The changes from the previous legislation being the previous Labour government's version of the bill, I should say. So changes are, there's now a recognised role for iwi Māori, rural communities and the wider community in governance. So they've made that quite clear in this new legislation that they want each of those key groups to have some part to play in governance. And what that looks like, again, the devil's in the detail, and we're yet to go through that and what that means for us. A good example is who is going to represent the wider community when it comes to these sorts of things. It's not a single group with a single representation, but again, we'll work through those and what the government is expecting of us. Requiring engagement with iwi Māori and the wider community. So a big emphasis of the reviews that the system doesn't do emergency planning that well. We do SOPs well, or procedures well. We can write what needs to happen well. We don't do collective planning well where it comes to communities' needs, agencies' needs, and councils' needs. So there's a deliberate effort to require community engagement into what that planning needs to look like. For Porirua, as an example, that's already been started. So the community emergency hub planning are already incorporated as part of Porirua City Council's response plan. So the baseline is there to carry through what the next steps are going to be looking like. But that collective planning is already started here in Porirua, which is good for the team. In terms of those standards, the legislation isn't going to specifically say what councils need to do or what agencies need to do. It's rather the high level. The standards that they're going to introduce, they're called directors' guidelines. Basically, they're going to be the standards that each agency are going to be required to meet. So one example that's coming out the guidelines for controllers. So I'm also a group controller, and one of the expectations in the bill is what standard do controllers need to be at so that we're confident that they have the skills, the capability to be able to lead in those times of crisis. So those are things like minimum training standards, and so driving that across the whole country so that there is a consistent approach to a lot of these sorts of things. So again, lots of work in progress. And I won't go through all the rest because I think I've briefed about essential infrastructure providers. Again, there's a big focus on making sure that there are good rules and regulations in place about how they need to set themselves up, whether it be business continuity planning, better engagement into the system so that there's better collective planning, or a recent example that I'm on a working group with the Insurance Council is how does the Insurance Council share key insurance information with the wider sector, especially when it comes to recovery space. So a lot of the legislation is trying to work through how we can work better together. As part of the Wellington CDM Group's response to the EM legislation and a lot of the reviews that have happened, I'm not sure if anyone here was part of the strategy workshops that have occurred the last 6 months of 2025, but the wider CDM Group undertook a range of workshops to develop the Wellington Region CDM Group Strategy 2025-2035, basically the high-level document to say over the next 10 years, what do we want to achieve for our CDM group. We decided to align our strategy with a pre-existing national strategy, the National Disaster Resilience Strategy, which has been around for a very long time. So those 3 key objectives or key strategic priorities are directly from that document. So we are aligned to the national strategic documentation when it comes to this, and we're following suit, focusing on 1, managing risk. So again, that's fairly straightforward. 2, how we deliver an effective response and recovery, and 3, community resilience. So we've made a deliberate effort to focus on the 3 key areas that we can actually make a difference in, or what can make a difference in the wider emergency management sector. How we prepare for emergencies and how we undertake land use planning and manage those risks beforehand, how we set the capabilities up to make sure that we can respond when we're asked to respond, but also we can recover when we need to recover, and how do we integrate the community resilience, the community response into the bigger picture. This is then going to feed into the group plan. So the group plan is basically a 5-year document that's going to outline what specific things that we as a group are going to tackle collectively. So the group plan, again, going back to that previous slide, who is the group? The group isn't just the councils, it isn't just Remo, it's actually emergency services, it's all the agencies that have a role to play. And so the next iteration of our group plan is intending to highlight the activities and roles that other agencies need to play to help improve the emergency management system, that it isn't just a council responsibility to improve the system, it's actually a collective, all of society responsibility. Again, trying to reinforce that we can't make a change by ourselves, we have to do it collectively together, and which makes sense because in an event, we are all responding collectively together. It isn't council responding in isolation of the others. And so going back to some of the challenges that we have, it cuts across all of that. So how do we work better together to not only agree on what our priorities are, but how we address the problems going through to them. And then, of course, a lot of the work programs, which I won't go through. So I'll go through this one really quickly because I'm mindful that probably the next section is where everyone's more interested in. Cool. Managing risks. So again, I'll start with what your role is, because in the managing risks one, it's emphasising that we should be proactive and preemptive about applying this sort of focus. So that's looking at what we're investing our money in across water transport, coastal protection, through the LTP and annual planning. Again, it's fairly stock standard stuff. How we decide to plan and develop within our respective regions. We've seen articles across the board about property developers being allowed to build in flood zones and those sorts of things. So this is really where that angle is kind of sitting, is how we manage that land use planning from an effective resilience point of view, and not just we need all of these houses because we're running out of houses. Regional collaboration on shared risk information, so that is already happening across the board. I know councils do regularly share risk information with each other, but it's also greater than council. Again, it's how is the Insurance Council sharing information with councils? How is Greater Wellington sharing their risk information across the board? How is FENZ and all those other agencies who do have data about risks? Again, this helps to create that collective picture of risk as a whole, as opposed to risk from a council point of view. And again, just to emphasise, your decisions today determine how severe the impacts will be tomorrow, which again is a good testament about. I think I heard previously one phrase being used, don't make today's solutions tomorrow's problems, is probably a good way to frame it, and the decisions we make today informing this. I'll quickly go through this. Again, it's been around for a very long time. The value of investing in risk reduction is pretty clear, and it's been clear across the international sector for some time. I think in the United States they had a 6-to-1 ratio of that return on investment. I've seen a recent one here in New Zealand where it was a 4-to-1 ratio. Again, investing now helps to save money down in the future. And of course, we've got some examples here about investing in resilience before big things happen, whether it be Te Papa and those base isolators and the heavy investment that they put into that versus the council building that they had in town, or I can't remember the exact name of the bridge out here at TG, but that was also had a resilience lens laid over it in terms of the investment, that it can withstand a fairly large earthquake, and the width was also designed with resilience in mind, so that if there are landslips that block part of the road, the rest of it can be utilised as well. So it's this dual benefit as part of these investments. The one on the right with, I think at the time was Minister Fa'afoi, there was a co-investment to build evacuation stairs near a school in the south coast of Wellington. The evacuation route was not a very good one, and there was a co-investment with a dual benefit to put this in place. Again, it's what can be invested to help reduce the risk beforehand, but also are there dual benefits to a number of these investment strategies that we are making. And then just to kind of close it all off with Porirua about some of the risks that are present. I know growing up here, we're always told about the fault line that runs right through the city. And if you're astute enough to be aware that living next to a coastal area, you have tsunami risk as well. And again, living here long enough, you also know that there are flooding risks. And I think most locals can probably say it off by heart where those flooding risks are that happen quite a bit. Cool. All right, moving into effective response and recovery. So this is our priority area 2. So Treasury reported some time ago that there's an 80% chance of another Cyclone Gabriel occurring in the next 50 years, and they did give an economic cost. So this assumption has driven a lot of the scenario planning that has been based in our new strategy. So we focus on 3 areas as part of our emergency planning. We've got most likely, which involves a lot of the floods that occur all the time. So those are the high frequency events that occur, right through to the most dangerous. So the most dangerous scenario for us would be either a Hikurangi fault line subduction earthquake that generates a tsunami, or an alpine fault line earthquake that also generates a tsunami. Planning for either end of the spectrum means that you can kind of cover whatever fits into the middle there, where you're covering your base on what most likely is going to happen. For Porirua, as an example, is a lot of flooding that occurs across the city, so those are high frequency events, and what planning needs to happen there versus the most dangerous. Since Cyclone Gabriel, we've also introduced a most likely plus scenario, which is effectively a lot stronger flooding situation. So if our region was to be impacted by a Cyclone Gabriel type event, last week was probably a close comparison to what that could have looked like. And again, a lot of these are informing how we're kind of positioning the Wellington CDN group in terms of what we need to plan for, what capabilities we need, and how do we address the problems together collectively, noting we've all observed how the rest of the North Island went through Cyclone Gabriel. So again, learning from their lessons to make sure we don't repeat those mistakes, or at least the risks aren't as bad, or the issues aren't as bad because we put some things in place as opposed to nothing. And this is what it really looks like as a whole. So again, most likely scenario, most likely plus, and most dangerous. A lot of it is trying to inform not only how we train our staff across all of the EOCs, but also what we need to think about in terms of planning and the rest.
that has to be a Japanese boat. It's not us.
I can find out where that is if you want.
I think I've seen the picture before. It's all right.
As part of planning for those scenarios, we also identified a number of challenges to be able to manage a most likely plus event. That's, again, we lack the workforce capability and capacity. We just don't have enough across the board to be able to satisfy a most likely plus event when it comes to how many people you need in an emergency operations centre to run. Up in Hastings, Hawke's Bay area, for example, they had hundreds of people per shift just to manage the event up there for Cyclone Gabriel. So again, it's do we have the means to be able to deliver that sort of response, and how can we achieve that? There's always uncertainty around who leads in these sorts of decisions. So again, from most of the events that I responded to on behalf of Porirua City Council for floods, its FENS obviously have a leading role when it comes to those sorts of events, and there's a conversation that needs to be had about, all right, when does it tip over to civil defence to take over and take the lead, which was a conversation that happened during the Plymouton floods, where FENS turned up to Plymouton first, and then there was a conversation about when the EOC needed to take over because of the increasing number of welfare issues and evacuations, and a lot of coordination that needed to happen. The third area is there's a lack of maturity and technical advice. Again, it's who are our risk advisors, whether it be at Greater Wellington or even at local councils, to inform about what some of these flood risks look like, what the compounding effects look like across the whole region. Again, we're not unique in our region where one disaster can hit one city in isolation of the others. We're quite transient in that nature, and we saw that quite true the other week, where I think the thunderstorm, one of the many thunderstorms that came through the region, started in Wellington City and decided to pay a visit up through to the Hutt and then over to the Wairarapa. This is just an overview of how our response framework operates. Hopefully it's fairly common knowledge. So right up the top, we have the National Crisis Management Centre, so that is staffed by NEMA, so they operate out of the bunker under Parliament or up in Auckland if the bunker is unavailable. Beneath them we have the Group Emergency Coordination Centre, so that is staffed by Greater Wellington Regional Council and based out of their office in town. So they were activated last week to coordinate the Wellington region's response because we had a number of EOCs that were activated. Across the region we have 6 Emergency Operations Centre, so each of the main urban councils has an EOC, and the Wairarapa have a combined EOC because of just the state of their capacity across the 3 councils. And then, of course, within those EOCs delivered a range of different services, but again, hopefully, with the EOC being active last week, there's a bit of common knowledge about what they were trying to achieve across there. So what happens in a response? That's an unfortunate one. So something happens. Generally, the REMO lead being our 24/7 duty system, which John has been a part of for a number of years, gets the call, again, whether it's from the Greater Wellington, he's actually duty officer today, so hopefully it doesn't ping off. So they'll receive a notification that something's happened. More often than not, it's from Greater Wellington Regional Council, their flood team, and having been Porirua City's EM lead for a while, the Porirua stream was often one of the areas, as well as Pāwatahanui and of course Karihana Bay, where there are alarms that get triggered, and then there is a notification process that happens between those agencies and the local council. And obviously a decision is made as to whether or not the EOC or ECC is activated. So those are generally calls that are made by your primary local controller, who in this case is Sandra Rogers back there, in combination with a number of local staff, whether it's Hannah, the comms manager, about what the social media sentiment is what's happening out there in the wide world of the communities, or emergency services who do have a stake in this as well, about whether coordination is required. And of course, a big focus is making sure that there is enough community support out there. So if communities require evacuations, welfare support, or better coordination, again, that's where the EOC comes into play to make sure that those things are delivered to those communities, be it rescue safety, shelter, food, lifeline restoration, or business support, which is generally a recovery type of approach after the fact. Here at the Porirua City Council EOC, it's staffed by Porirua City Council staff primarily. There's a few pictures of some trainings over the last few years. I'm not sure, John, if you wanted to speak to any of the training bit up there.
So we do training for Porirua City Council staff and our partners who come on courses, and there's 3 levels to that. There's a foundation course, and that's to take our librarian, our parks maintenance person or the pool attendants to be able to come in to an EOC and have some degree of comfort and familiarity. So it's fairly rudimentary, it's basic, it's the principles about emergency management. We then have further courses at an intermediate level where we'll start diving into the functions, so logistics, operations, welfare and so forth, and then advanced course at that manager level. This is supplemented by exercises, a couple of major exercises we have throughout the year, and then various other workshops focusing on hazards and other processes that we have. So lots happening. Thanks, Sam.
A big focus of the training program that we have is obviously about developing capability. And in my mind, capability is competence and confidence. Competence being attending the training to understand the nuances of emergency management, and confidence being built by the repetition that you apply by going to training, going to the exercises. It's akin to the All Blacks. And why they're so good is that repetition, to build that muscle memory so that when you're forced to make a decision or do something under high pressure, ambiguous environments, you can at least reflect back onto your training that you've done, and hopefully it becomes muscle memory. Whereas, again, the opposite was seen post-Cyclone Gabriel with a number of councils up north where they didn't have any training, or they didn't have that sort of repetition to build muscle memory, and they were set up to fail. They did the best that they can, though. I'll probably make that point. Moving on from the response and recovery space, there's also an obligation in the recovery environment, emphasising that it's not a sprint or a marathon. Our region has gone through 2 recovery incidents over the last 3 months into this year alone. The South Wairarapa recently went through their first recovery period a few months ago when Porirua and various coastal communities on the east coast of Masterton were inundated with floods, and so they had to go through a recovery transition period. Part of that helped to unlock some national funding at the time, because obviously a number of other councils, CDM areas across the North Island, were also going through a recovery phase. This was at the same time that Mount Maunganui had their major landslip, and so there was a lot of things happening at the time. A key thing about recovery, it's as described here, it's long, bloody and exhausting. A good example is Christchurch. I don't know if they are truly out of recovery yet, even to this date. And so it is an enduring process that lasts a hell of a lot longer than the response does. A response might last a day or a few days, whereas a recovery can go weeks, months, years, decades.
But they have a rebuilt city and new infrastructure.
They have all of that, yeah. And so the recovery space is really where a lot of those challenges, they're more nuanced challenges as well compared to the response space. And obviously with the focus on 5 key environments about how you build back in each of those, the process is really trying to incorporate the community as part of that recovery process. I know Mike here has been involved in a number of recovery situations over the years, and I think you're still somewhat involved in the Westport one, bits and pieces. It is an enduring space that you go through all sorts of phases, be the storming, norming, forming phases, and sometimes you repeat the whole thing within the same day with the same community as well. So it presents its own unique challenges, but again, it is a responsibility of council and Mia back there as your local recovery manager, and Nick as well. So just to kind of round up your roles in readiness and response and recovery. So in terms of readiness, it's understanding what your community's needs and resources are. So it's turning up to understanding how information needs to be shared between the official response system, Mayor Baker. I know there is a process that is played out here in Porirua where there is kind of channeled through various systems. So it's understanding what those are and how you can feed that into your respective communities. Personally, from your own point of view, it's having a household plan in place. Again, we encourage to make sure that your own household is set up before you try and help others. It's the same principle that you do on an airplane about putting the breather on yourself first. Again, there's no point wanting to help others if your own household's going through a catastrophic time themselves. And again, it's also attending community emergency hub practices. So with Whetu Bennett, it's turning up with him when he conducts those hub practices or hub exercises to not only show face, but also be part of that community dynamic. Because again, when push comes to shove and the real thing happens, it's building that familiarity. I think there's a strategy as part of Maungaroa 2050, trusted faces and trusted places. The same principle can apply in this context. From an elected member point of view, when pressure and stress comes, it's nice for communities to see people that are familiar and trusted to them.
He needs to tell us when they're on, though.
Oh, yes.
That's not happened lately. Luckily, we had one cancelled, unfortunately, due to the weather.
I will pass that on.
Thank you.
Good feedback. And then lastly, this is something that we're encouraging as of late is try and attend your EOC exercise when you can, or at least have an understanding about how those operate. You all have a role to play when those things activate, and it probably makes sense to understand how it kind of operates. Who's who in the zoo? Who are your leaders when it comes to controllers? Again, building that familiarity that when you're out there in the community being questioned by the community about what's happening there, at least you have some familiarity with what's happening in that place up the road. And then, of course, your role in response and recovery, very similar to readiness, connecting in with your community and mayor when things happen, whether it be in response or in the recovery space, reinforcing that official information from the mayor and from the EOC/council. Again, in emergency events, you see all sorts of information coming out of the woodworks, whether it's valid or whether it's made up AI-generated stuff. It's really important then in these events, it's the source, what is the source of truth? Shared verified information from the Mayor and the EOC. Again, support the community effort, whether it be at the hubs or Wellington City, for example, are opening up community drop-in centres in Island Bay or some of those other affected areas. So their elected members are going to tag along as well. Again, being present in the community during these sorts of things. A recent example of Stokes Valley where their mayor and elected members turned out to that one. Again, it was tough confrontational stuff from the community, yes, but again, it is really important to have that visibility during and post these sorts of things. And then, of course, I think this is an important one that has come out of Cyclone Gabriel, is supporting your EOC and recovery staff. Something that we saw post-Cyclone recovery, Cyclone Gabriel, was a lot of EOC staff, whether it be in the Hawke's Bay or Auckland, were specifically targeted, not by elected members, but by members of the public who knew that they had a role in emergencies. Their controller, their child was specifically targeted because they knew that their parent was the controller and the one making the calls. And again, it's about making sure that we support those staff who get called to volunteer to turn out to the EOC and into the recovery space. Again, for many staff, it is an add-on to their day job. And so they're going above and beyond to try and not only support their community, but also put in the blood, sweat and tears to try and make things better for and on behalf of the community. So this is the very last slide. So going through community resilience, my pride and joy. So a big emphasis on community resilience is everyone's an emergency manager. We know that to be a fact, whether it be observing the student army come out in force during the Christchurch earthquakes in 2011, the communities taking over the welfare response in the Nelson fires while the council was setting up welfare centres elsewhere in the city. The community had already done it. But also the COVID-19 2020 response. The community has a natural affinity to responding to what goes wrong in their respective environment. It is a natural phenomena that happens regardless of whether we in the official system say, no, don't do it. If there's something that they see needs to be done, they'll do it. Good example is out in the Wairarapa with farmers just getting out there with their tractors and moving things along. Don't tell me what to do, council. I'm going to move it out of that way, whether you like me to or not. And so we know that's going to happen. A challenge is how do we tap into that energy and direct it to a place where it can benefit not only the official response but also the community as well. And that goes to that point in the review that we don't work well together. And it's also quite difficult too when it comes to structure. More often than not, the community and the official response, they don't work in tandem. I don't know, does anybody know which is community and which is official? Yeah, I've often been confused over the years. The left one, people say that is the community response. It's messy, it's uncoordinated. I say no, that is wrong, because the observations I've made is actually communities are a hell of a lot more coordinated than the official response ever will be. It's just not coordinated in the same way. We have these fixed structures. Communities have their network structures. They have their aunts, their uncles, their neighbours. They form a natural structure when it comes to emergency events. And so this idea that they're messy and uncoordinated is a bit of a fallacy. Actually, they're a lot faster to respond than we ever will be. And the question for us is how do we tap into that so that they're working for the collective benefit like we are as well, or trying to.
Don't growl at them when they turn up with their digger to clear the road faster than us, would be good.
One way that we try and tap into this energy is facilitating them through the Community Emergency Hub model. A big part of community resilience across the international sphere is a thing called asset-based community development. So that's naturally Aotearoa does it quite well when you think of maraes as an asset that is in the community with planning that's done around that. The Community Emergency Hub model plays a similar role to maraes or churches or those assets that are already in the community that communities are connected to. The idea behind the Community Hub is to tap into that social cohesion so that people can come together to be able to respond together. Ideally, they're at maraes or faith-based places where you've already got an established community there already, and people just need to go along to that. But that's the idea behind the Community Emergency Hub, where it encourages you to focus on your household first, your neighbourhood second, and then going to the hub to be able to support there. Again, it encourages personal responsibility about what you need to do, and then how they fit into the wider system. But also that the hub is there for them. It is for your community-led response. It's not the official response. Again, they will respond whether we like it or not. The question for us is, are we going to set them up to succeed in a better way than by not being involved at all? We've got about 128 hubs across the region, so again that establishes a regionally consistent model that if you are a resident of the Wairarapa or Wellington City or Kapiti Coast, that if you were for some reason shopping in Porirua on the day of a big event, there is a commonality and a familiarity with a lot of the systems and facilities that we have so that they can understand that the hub is the hub, regardless if you're in Porirua, Wellington or Upper Hutt. A big emphasis of the hub process is to identify what resources communities already have in their area. Often we say emergency management is under-resourced and we lack the capacity to deal with the problems. That is true until you incorporate the community capacity as part of that, because the community actually has a lot of capacity and a lot of resources available to them around their respective areas. So the hub process is trying to elicit that from the community so that they can recognise that they've already got a lot of things around them. How do we utilise what we already have to coordinate ourselves in a big event? So that's the underlying principles of the Community Emergency Hub model, is to recognise what is already there, not ask what we need more of or what we're missing. Again, resources are all around us. Talking specifically on the work with the Pacifica space, so having previously been Porirua City Council's emergency management lead, we were fortunate enough to have a fantastic strategy under Ola Kamatanga to drive what our mahi should be looking like in the Pacifica space. So this has been a combination of Remo and Porirua City Council and also the Pacific team over the number of years to drive initiatives out there, be it establishing the first Pacifica-based community emergency hub here in Porirua over at Efakasa Church in Waitangirua. That's been a fantastic example of what an asset-based community development looks like, where you've already got a pre-established asset with a pre-established network around it, who have the energy and the drive to want to improve what a response needs to look like for their particular community. And so that's seen them go from strength to strength, reaching out to connect with the amateur radio club, reaching out to connect with various stakeholders across their community. Again, that's what we're trying to emulate across all of the community hubs, is to take ownership of your community resilience at the local level, with support from council and Remo to help deliver a lot of those things. It's also looking at tapping into other avenues, whether it be the movie night where Tina was played over at the Lighthouse Cinema, where there were, I can't remember the numbers, but it was a packed house of all Pacifica. Part of the corridor was around community resilience, so it was an opportunity to tap into to watch that fantastic movie that had emergency management undertones, because it was based down in Christchurch and the consequences post-Christchurch earthquake, but also as that chance to talk in front of those Pacifica communities who tended the event on the day, which I know a number of, I remember Councillor Fila was there and a few others too, as well as work with, now I can't remember the specific name of it, but they are the Tokelau community up in the east there. So there's been recent conversations with them about emergency planning that the team have been involved in. Again, it's about being proactive with these groups and coming to the table about how we can collectively build that capability together, whether it be through training, fostering good opportunities, or tapping into what the EOC looks like and what needs to happen across the board. And then in terms of supporting iwi Māori capability, again, it's connected to Maungaroa 2050, the strategy that Council had put in place a number of years ago. It's doing things like working with Hono, which is an outfit led by one Hinemoa Kātene, who's tied to Ngāti Toa. So that is a Māori-based emergency management consultancy that delivers emergency training directly to Māori communities. So that top left example was actually delivered up in the Emergency Operations Centre end of last year, and there was a range of Ngāti Toa and other community members from Marae who came along and were trained on how the EOC is supposed to work. And I know that because I had to facilitate that particular session for them. So again, it's being proactive and delivering these sorts of services to whether it be Ngāti Toa or a number of marae across the board. The right one, although Mr. Whippy is in the background, that was a specific session with Honga Weka Marae, where Mr. Whippy was brought along and they were able to have a really good community event over there. Or to the bottom left one, which is each of the marae across Porirua have what they call an Aitua response container, basically a shipping container with a bunch of resources in them that's based at each of the marae, and working with council about how you can activate that, how it can fit into the wider system. But again, it's about being deliberate and working with each of them to be able to build their capabilities and to help them own community resilience in their respective areas. I think there's 2 more slides. So again, there's much more information online about what community emergency hubs are, and hopefully Fetu can send out more information, and I'll follow up with him about early advisory of when these community hub sessions are coming up.
Thank you. We have got, Kylie wants a question. No?
I don't have a question, but I just have a couple of comments.
Okay, fire away.
I'll just do it quickly.
I know we're tight for time now.
Sorry. With your Māori, iwi Māori, it's quite interesting because here in Porirua we have Te Kupenga Māori Porirua, so these are all the marae across Porirua that kind of get together. And last night there was a trip to the EOC, which I thought was quite timely from last week. I know our whānau in Hungaweka had a bit of trouble last week as well, so I think that was quite timely for them. So that was the first thing. The second one is you brought up the Stokes Valley example of community resilience, coming together, getting in there and just getting it done, as you could see on the news. So how I think going forward it'd be great to see how our communities, for example, an Ely Road could, or Plimmerton could, could I don't know how they could or we could come together like that to offer the same type of help in an instance like
I think they did get together. We just didn't publicise it. Oh, yeah. Pete Barton will be able to tell you. He was on the ground there.
Yeah, but
they were out
I think,
with
the more we
shovels.
know, the more we know. So
Yeah,
if you don't
that's
know, you
right.
don't know. So,
there was.
just going forward, it'd be great if we, maybe a bit more communication around that. Be cool.
Moira.
Yeah, just I guess similar feedback. I know it's hard because there's such a big area to cover, but there's something about understanding how the two-way information works from a community point of view. Like I know in the big rain in Porirua Bay, there was a quick Facebook go around because the school hall's the community hub. The school hall's under construction at the moment, no use as a hub. So people went, oh, could we use this? Could we do that? Yeah, Rex. So basically they established their own hub. They've zoomed around on Facebook and worked out they could use St Mark's. They just contacted someone, yes, that would be fine, blah, 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 put out a message on Facebook saying it can't be the hall, it'll be St Mark's. But they didn't tell anyone else that because they don't know who to tell that the community is working on that.
Comes through to the Porirua City Council line. So that comes, if they ring that main line, they will notify our centre. Well, their hub would know that, but we can pass that on at their hub. Yeah. Anyone else with questions? Jeff.
I'm actually going to make this easier. I will come in back to you, Sam and John, to actually answer, because I've got like a whole heap of partai. I don't want to hold everybody else up. One thing, ngā mihi kia koru me tā tātou mahi, especially in the last couple of weeks of a response. I don't think anybody around this table is going to say that, be disappointed with the amount of effort that people from across the entire region did in responding to that. So please forward on our thanks. Kia ora.
Mike.
Resilience in water, Te Aki Wai's involvement in that. Are you guys involved with Te Aki Wai?
We have been asked to get involved in some workshops on what that is looking like, but that's probably all I can update.
There is a stormwater task force that's been set up specifically to look at this kind of thing, and we're well represented on that task force. Stormwater is the hardest of the three waters, and I do not have a magic bullet to solve some of the issues that we are talking about here today.
Any other questions? No? Thank you both for coming in. Thank you. Mike, could you move seats and become taku so the three staff can come? Will I see you at hearings tomorrow? Right, I'll bring the papers in. Okay, our last online briefing today on the use of the licence plate recognition technology for parking and enforcement. Nick, are you doing this one?
Yeah, thank you, Anita. Just before we get into that, I do have an answer about what's happening north of Parramatta Railway Station. So satisfy your nosy parker request, and that is that Kiwi Rail are applying for stockpile of rocks to strengthen the seawall. That's about for the railway line. So we have the stockpiling resource consent and Greater Wellington has the location consent. So close to the tidal area, so Greater Wellington. So that's what's happening.
That makes sense. Could you just message that through to Taku so he knows?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Yes, it's for their land. So it's to do repair work on the seawall along the railway line. I assume so. It must be starting that. So, so I'll let Taku know. And
thank you.
Thanks. Anyway, on to parking. So, look, this is just a short briefing because it's largely operational. However, it's likely to generate interest. And I guess it's important that you know where it's come from, why we're doing it, and I guess what that looks like. So as you also know, looking at the health and safety reports in audit and risk, the parking team has its fair share of threatening behaviour instances, which are certainly not getting any better. They may dip a little bit and rise, but generally the nature of the threatening behaviour is getting worse, which is a really significant health and safety concern for us. There's only so much we can do by way of pairing up, de-escalation, conflict management, etc. And so this work is considering a technological response to do two things. One, to keep our staff safer, and two, to be as efficient as we can be as a parking enforcement regulator. So the plan is for the work to go live from the 4th of May and start on schools. So we will take a soft release approach. I guess questionable whether schools is a soft release. Feels softer than the CBD, but who knows. We will have comms going out ahead of the when people will see the car, so that it's socialised a little bit. And I guess just to highlight from a privacy perspective, because that's one of the key concerns around the car that's often registered with the public, is concern about their privacy. So just so you know that any face is blurred, so we do not use any of that privacy information. We store it as we do under the Privacy Act. We've checked the technology for that in our system, and it is checked by staff before it goes anywhere. So I guess those are the two key things that there may be interest about, but we have got checks and balances. That's in the report, and I'll leave it for you to ask any questions around the mechanics of it to Matt Kenny and Marina and I, who are our senior parking officers and team leader.
Maura, can you wait till they're finished, or do you want it before? No? Okay. You'll need to turn your mics on, all of you. Who's speaking to it? Just questions. Okay, Moira, you first up then.
I'm not sure if these are questions to the team. I just note it talks about upfront and ongoing costs, but it doesn't mention what the costs are. That's my first question. My second question is, you might assume with technology that this means that we would, over time, potentially reduce staff. But what I hear this report saying is, rather than that, we're saying it will get us better coverage of parking infringement across the city. It's my second point. And my third question is probably to Jim. I mean, this is expanding the need for us to have really good data security, because now it's another risk area for us in terms of information that we hold. So I'm just wondering if he might comment on that.
Who's going first?
I'll take that one. So, thank you for the question. So on your first point in relation to the costs, due to commercial sensitivity, we weren't able to include that in the paper today. So, but we have those details available after the workshop if you want to see them. Sorry, your second point.
Yes, we are online.
Your second point was...
Just, I'm assuming this is about broadening the coverage of parking infringements.
Yes, it is. Currently, our team makeup is very minimal, so this will allow us to be able to cover the whole Porirua boundary, as opposed to what we currently do with foot patrol. We can only schedule officers in certain areas at certain times, and with the schools being the first part of our phase rollout is obviously in the paper it mentions that currently we can only pick one school a day each day of the week, whereas with the vehicle we now have the capability of covering 3 to 4 schools a day, and we get a lot of feedback from or complaints from parents around unsafe parking around schools. So, and that's just another key benefit, I guess, of having this technology to our...
I suppose very much a supportive tool. So I suppose, we want to get out right across Porirua, and I suppose to quantify just a couple of numbers, at the moment we're doing probably one school a term, and it's now going to, I suppose, have a school visited probably up to one every sort of 7 days. So it's obviously a huge increase in terms of trying to, I suppose, ensure driver behaviour does change, because I think that's one of the things that we're seeing is that this is about safety, about pedestrians, members of our community, feeling safe, whether it's, at the school gate or just simply, going for a walk, whether it's through the middle of the day, at night, in the weekend. We want them to be able to walk and not feel, that their safety is at risk by, poor sort of parking behaviour, really.
The last one was job reductions. There aren't any? No.
No.
Yeah, data security. So that's been answered, or?
No, it hasn't been answered, but the team have worked with the IT group, BTG. We've got actually a briefing on cyber security at the next Audit and Risk Committee. I might get the CIO to actually respond more directly to that. It's quite an expert area,
Okay.
which I'm not.
Josh?
Thank you. Yeah, look, for me, number one priority, safety of staff. Absolutely happy to support whatever it is that we need to do for that. The questions I have, I guess, are whether or not this is the best solution to address that particular concern. And in the report, it talks about how one of the problems we have at the moment is that because of staffing levels, you're not able to go out in pairs, and it has to be individuals. So I guess what I would like to understand is, how do we see the proposed safety benefits of this stacking up compared to just, say, having two people go out at all times, so everyone's always in pairs? Like, would one of those be better than the other? And I guess I would be interested in understanding in terms of projected costs, because I've got no idea what the costs are at the moment, which one of those is going to be more cost effective. I assume there's upfront and ongoing costs. Are most of the costs upfront? Like, is it CapEx at the start and then some small operational expenditure into the future? So there's a couple of things there, I guess, if you could speak to those.
First point was, sorry, can you just...
So first point was, if you could choose, forget about the money.
Yeah.
If you could choose implement this or just have enough staff that they were going out in pairs all the time, what do you think would be better from a safety perspective?
I think I might answer this.
No.
It feels fairer than asking them. So, Josh, I'd answer it in that it's not one or the other. So the vehicle adds another tool for coverage and in some cases safety in high risk areas. But you're never going to replace being on foot at times. So we are assessing a lot of tools. At the moment, this is the one that a lot of other councils are using too as a good one that's enduring and sustainable. There's other tools around, the parking plates that you can have in fixed parking. Some of those don't work very effectively. Our backup system doesn't support it very well. So we are continuously looking at what is the best way to balance safety, coverage, and changes in behaviour. And in the LTP, we will bring a finer grain on the cost benefit of the different ways we enforce. And I think it's about having a toolbox, not just one, pairing up more staff, 2, all vehicles, 3, other technological solutions, because there are other technologies developing, and I guess we're constantly looking. So it's all about the level of service as well, right? Which is why we think that conversation in the LTP is a good one to have here and animal control, because there's this level of service balance that right now we run small teams. We've got no more than 5 officers in each group. So that's not a lot for the size of the city. So it's an LTP conversation looking under the hood, I think. If that answers your question.
It does,
some way?
Yeah, it does. And it gets to, because the next thing I was going to ask is that I'm not crystal clear, I guess, on the primary purpose of what's being proposed, because the report seems to talk about a health and safety perspective, and a lot of the discussion we've heard is about actually broadening out our level of service and getting to more places. So it's both
It's
of those
both.
things.
It is primarily health and safety
Okay.
stuff, and it is secondarily efficiency.
Yeah.
It is those two things.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I guess just the comment I would make is that I'm fully in support of us doing what we need to do to make sure that our staff are safe. That's number one priority. I don't think it's an option not to do anything. That's really clear that things are getting worse. What I would like to understand, I guess, is what those options are, what's going to be the most effective, and then provided that this is the most cost-effective option that also means our staff feel like they're going to be adequately safe, I would be totally fine supporting this.
Yeah.
I guess is where I'm going, but we would just need a bit more
This
information.
it's already happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I guess the point of us being briefed is that we understand it. We need to interrogate it
Going
as well,
forward.
right? Like
Going forward.
Yeah. We're making sure that this is the right thing to do. Am I right in assuming that so there's an upfront capital cost, which will be the big thing, and then there's some ongoing that won't be as much because it seems to be maintained within operational budgets currently.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Can we send you that information
Yeah.
internally?
Friday update.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's me.
Ross.
Thank you.
Sorry, maybe I didn't read or get this. So how's this going to work? So is this going to, when you run past schools and you pick up a number plate, generate a ticket?
No.
So what does it do then actually?
So basically, the technology allows us to drive past vehicles. It literally just scans for number plates. So that's the data that it's soaking up. And then it's only when the officer takes that information back into the office and they're able to process what's a potential violation. A warranted officer has to determine whether there is an offence or not in the evidence that's captured through the vehicle, and only then will an infringement be issued or a warning. So it's not that the vehicle will go around and just scan vehicles and automatically produce infringements. It still relies heavily on our staff to be able to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a staffer involved back at the office. That will involve quite a bit of analysis, won't it?
It can be if the system or the solution or system has the ability for us to set certain rules and zones in it, so it can, like for example, if we zone a specific area to look for a specific offence, if the car goes in that zone, it's only going to look for that particular offence and highlight to us potential violation. So we could scan maybe 500 cars in that one block, but it may only pick up 5 potential violations,
Right.
and it's only the 5 that we would review. We wouldn't review the whole 500 that picked up.
All right, that's good to know, and thank you, Nick, and also Josh and Moira, thinking about the future, and this is just one tool in the toolbox. Can I just make a comment that in the material that I saw, because I think that whole thing around public facial recognition as well as nameplate recognition, I didn't see, there were a list of things, and I haven't gone to them, there are a list of things that we were going to put out with our PR. I didn't see there won't be any facial recognition, like we won't be picking up people's identities.
Yeah, so
just to make sure that is communicated well.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good pickup. We'll change it. That's all right, Hannah?
Yeah, and the other thing that we're wanting to stress out to the public through our comms, and obviously we will talk to our comms team just to do that tweak before it goes out, is that it's important for the public to be aware that it's not a surveillance tool. Yeah. It's literally not scanning for face. It's literally only looking for number plates, and the system actually has a really great redaction tool that's attached. So even if, say, in the background of a person's face, there might be questions around children's faces being captured while we're going through schools as well. I guess that's where our job as the warranted officer, when we're processing these 4 infringements, that we use the redaction tool to redact any information that we believe does not necessarily have to be as part of the evidence for that particular infringement.
Mike?
Yeah, look, first off, congratulations for this. It takes confrontation out of the element, straight out of it. And I think that's a fantastic thing for you guys because you are brave. You full credit. Look, I've made a few complaints about people parking on footpaths, and I know some of those places that I'm talking about aren't the best of places to approach. So this is a great tool for dealing with that. Does it pick up registration and warrants of fitness is out of date?
The system has that capability to do so, but as part of our rollout, we're not currently looking at doing that. We're more focused on the safety offences as opposed to registration warrants. Yeah. So we've only got a set amount of offences that we're looking at, and it's the ones that are basically have a safety aspect tied to it.
Holly.
Thank you. Ooh, welcome to the 21st century. It makes complete sense from a safety point of view. I also think it's a better use of time. We've been saying for years how we're going to enforce a bylaw. You know, I think this is one way of doing it. My colleague here asked you the question about parking over footpaths, but would that also, would the parking illegally and disabled parking also be considering the actual
health and safety side?
No, their permit is at the front, but you're driving back. So how would that work?
Yes.
You go. So in respect to the mobility parking at the moment, I think nationally, New Zealand, sort of the Parking Association are working towards a national database. So at the moment, mobility parking can't actually be picked up by the camera in terms of being able to actually verify whether a person has a valid card displayed. So I suppose if they had a national database that we could access, one of the big problems that they have is the card belongs to the person and not the car. Yeah. And if somebody has, I suppose, 10 cars, maybe in a family, you know, at the highest point, it's going to be quite hard to, I suppose, have a bit of a national database where something like that could be used.
That one's always going to be a bit of a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're going to have to still do mobility manually by foot.
Basically.
Yeah. Sorry, my last question is with that and having resources and being able to be other places at once, what will happen around kind of the education side of it down in the city centre? Because I have seen you guys, or you down there, talking to the community. Yes, I do know that you get abused, but at the same time, I've seen you educate people on their parking and their behaviours as well. So how will it affect education down in the city centre?
It won't change it. We will still be on foot in the CBD. It would only. We won't be on foot if, say, we only had one officer that turned up in the office. We would probably put them in the car to go in the CBD as opposed to just them out in the CBD by themselves. But so this is supporting our current approach. It's not going to replace anything. So we still recognise that there is an importance for us to be able to still have that relationship or that engagement with the public, because that's the only way they're going to know for next time. So and that's why the tool will support us mainly in the suburbs, because that's predominantly where we are seeing some of that parking behaviour. But we would only use it in the CBD if, say, we were low on staff and we don't want to put one person out there in the CBD by themselves.
Kathleen?
I appreciate that you guys have a really challenging job, and my hat's off to you, because somebody's got to do it. I wouldn't want to, you know. So I can see, you know, why this tool's been put forward. I would like to understand it a bit more. So we're going to start with the schools, and then how long there before it starts to roll out to the suburbs?
So we've sort of indicated between 4 and 6 weeks we'll probably be in the school. So we've sort of said May, the whole of May, we're just going to have a strong focus around school. And then we're just going to be constantly evaluating the data or what we're capturing and whether we need a tweak. You know, the zones, because obviously schools, without getting really into detail, we've got the schools in certain about 7 to 8 zones, I think, currently. And then when we go live, it may end up being 10 zones. So until we get that sort of done, will we then progress to the next phase, which would be the one where we do our suburban campaign. We currently do that now, or we've been doing that for years, but it's been very long because it relies on officers having to get out of the car, like go to each suburb, get out of the car and issue infringements, whereas now we'll be able to get around to the whole community a lot quicker, just like the schools, as opposed to, say, how long a loop for the whole city would take. So Does that answer your question, or did I? No.
Yeah, I think I did. I got a couple more. So the ticket will, when you go back to the office, the ticket, will it just go in the mail then to people's?
Yeah.
Yes.
So basically, the warranted officer comes back and reviews the footage, and then basically a ticket's then produced by a warranted officer and then sent out in the mail.
With the schools, I'm just trying to envision this. So will you just be sort of just driving past the school and then keep driving to the next school?
Yes.
Yeah, and then just whatever you pick up will be whatever you pick up?
Yep. Basically, that's sort of what we've planned. We still plan to have if we can, officer on foot at a particular school that's low risk.
Right.
Just for that community engagement, just the education side of things. So, but if we know we're going to be patrolling schools that are all high risk, then we're going to have 2 officers in the car, one doing observations that support the police, and then one for us, because we currently support the police with observations as well, safety observations for people, Can you elaborate on the parking, the observations?
Yeah, so the observations, we do support the police with, I suppose, providing data around people not wearing seat belts and, I suppose, on mobile phones, and we're passing on information to, I suppose, give it to the police where they can, I suppose, put a focus on a particular area. So there might be a particular school that's particularly bad, and we'll sort of say to the police, hey, we've noticed 10 people, the last, wearing no seatbelt. You probably want to put some focus on that, because it seems to be quite a high risk sort of school, for stuff like no seatbelts and mobile phones.
Cool, thanks. I didn't know that you were doing that. The device itself, is it just going to be attached to council's current fleet?
Yeah, so it's a mobile solution. We opted for a mobile solution, so it's not fixed to a vehicle. It's actually, we can move it from one vehicle to another, and it's quite easy to install and sort of take down. And the device, there's cameras that are attached. We basically just pop them on top of the window, and then we take it back and we pack it away at the end of the day. But there is an iPad that sits inside the vehicle that does its thing. It basically just, all it is just brings up all the photos of everything that it's sort of captured on your journey. So, and for us to know that the equipment or the cameras are actually working, we need the iPad. So that's why, if we didn't have the iPad, we'd be driving around and not knowing if the cameras are actually working. So the iPad is there for us to check and make sure that it is working, and it is capturing what we need it to capture. And the officers also have an opportunity at that point to also pause. So it's not scanning everywhere you drive. So you can stop and start the camera quite frequently depending on where you're going. So if you're in this area and then you need to go to another area on the other side of Porirua, we wouldn't keep the cameras rolling all the way there, because it'll just capture so much data that is not necessary. So we'll just pause it and then drive to the next area.
How many of those devices are you sort of starting with?
One.
Yeah.
Oh, just one?
Yeah.
Okay. I would be interested too to see the cost out of.
Yeah, that's coming in the update.
Yep.
I'm just wondering though, with the commercial, because it's obviously probably happened 4th of May, would there be commercial sensitivity if we've already got it?
Nick's going to answer that.
Yeah, it's not typical that we would disclose our procurement process and how we've assessed providers and who they are and what they cost. That's not our current practice, which is why we've not disclose that information in public, but we can certainly give you the overview of the ingoings and outgoings and include some information, like I say, internally. That's why we haven't brought that here, because otherwise competitors, can look at that, etc. So it's still quite current. So we just feel like we'd rather be safe than sorry in that space. But we can certainly give you the information that you're asking for through Wendy's email, through that other channels. Just on cost, sorry.
I could just help Nick here. This application went through the procurement committee, and it did follow our procurement policies and approach. So that was signed off there.
Can I just say on cost, some other councils have been criticised that this is a sort of a revenue generating activity for councils, and that's the focus of it. That's not our focus at all. By way of more coverage, there's a chance it may increase our revenue, but that's not a goal in of itself. So just to be clear, because we are likely to receive the same criticism from some as other councils have, but just want to be clear that that isn't the primary or secondary goal of this tool.
And probably just to add on to Nick's comment there, we have, because we're in control, we have the control over the volume that we do produce. So even though it may produce 100, whatever it is, we still have that discretion, so we can still control it in that sense, and it isn't necessarily everything we've captured, you get a ticket and you get a ticket. It's actually, we can manage, because we've got a small amount of staff that also relies heavily on the back end. So if we don't have enough people to process it, then it doesn't make sense for us to go and collect hundreds and hundreds. So we're learning lessons from other councils that have sort of fallen into that and have now learnt that lesson. So I think the relationship that we have with our regional councils that are either have LPR or are trialling LPR currently, it's allowed us to get the information that we need to be able to manage some of these problems that they faced when they went live.
Yeah.
And making sure that we don't fall in that same gap or space. Yeah.
Izzy.
Hey, sorry, I'm not sure if I missed anything. I probably have missed the questions, but shush. I appreciate that you did actually include the rollout plan, so we knew like how you want to approach this. Just confirming, it's Monday coming that you're doing this, and it's at the schools.
Yes.
First.
Yeah.
And I think there's no doubt about it. I mean, you're talking about revenue gathering, but this is really about keeping our staff safe as well. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a no-brainer. If we didn't have asshats out there, then we wouldn't need this added security. Just around the device itself, how much was that?
No, we've just had
is that what?
Yes.
Yeah. I was here for that and I still missed it. Anyways.
At least you own it.
Yeah, hey.
Thank you.
That was all I had to...
Thank you, Izzy.
Just on costs, can I just say, we're not talking big costs. So the annual operating cost is 34 grand. So we're not talking big money. I'll just be clear about that. We're not hundreds of thousands, we're barely even tens of thousands. So just to be,
Thank you,
to give you
Nick.
some context.
Thank you. Thank you, team, for coming in. We appreciate that. And good luck with the launch on Monday.
Thank you.
Hey, karakia.
Toru whā, kia horo te marino, kia whakapapa pauna, e hurahi mā tātou i te rangi nei, aroha mai tātou i a tātou katoa, hui e, tāe ki e.